Other early schools. 1. The Gate of Kavanah. Although much of the early explicit material regarding Kabbalah meditation stems from Abulafia's writings, there were also a number of other schools contemporary to him. The most important was the school in Provence, France, which was heir to the mystical teachings of the Bahir, and eventually published this book in the late 1100s. Until the 12th century, the Kabbalah had been a carefully concealed mystery in the hands of a few very small and restricted secret societies. So hidden were these that some of the greatest rabbinical leaders were not even aware of their existence. The first ones to break this silence were the great Kabbalists of Provence. The earliest known members of this school were Isaac and Jacob Nazir, both of Lunel. The title Nazir indicated that they had separated themselves from all worldly activities, devoting all their time to worship and the study of the Torah. The community supported a number of such individuals, creating an atmosphere where the contemplative life necessary for the teaching of the Kabbalah and its methods could flourish. Another important member of this group was Rabbi David ben Isaac, head of the rabbinical court, whose son was the famed Ra'avad, Rabbi Abraham ben David of Posquier, renowned as the author of the standard gloss on Maimonides' Code. A master of the mystical arts, the Ra'avad received the tradition from his father, as well as from his father-in-law, the famed Rabbi Abraham ben Isaac of Narbonne, best known as the author of the Eshkol. In his legal commentaries, the Ra'avad actually writes that his school was subject to divine inspiration and the revelations of mysteries. The Ra'avad's son, known as Isaac the Blind, inherited leadership of the school from his father and brought it to Provence. Even though he was blind, he was reputed to be able to look into a person's soul and see his thoughts. In his commentary on the Torah, Rabbi Bachya ben Asher calls him the father of Kabbalah. Rabbi Isaac the Blind had two disciples, Rabbi Ezra and Rabbi Azriel, both of Girona. They assumed leadership of the school and authored a number of very interesting books on the Kabbalah. It is from them that the Kabbalah tradition passed to the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, Nachmanides, one of the most important religious scholars and leaders of that period. It is most probably from Rabbi Azriel of Girona that we have one of the very few works describing the meditative methods used by the Provence school. This is the Sha'ar HaKavanah Lemekubalim Harishonim, the Gate of Kavanah of the early Kabbalists. This short essay exists in a large number of manuscripts and is reproduced in its entirety in the unpublished fourth section of Rabbi Chaim Vital's Sha'arei Kedusha. Here, we find a system of meditation very different than that of Abulafia, even though it appears that he was aware of it. This text speaks of kavanah in a very remarkable context. The word itself is very difficult to translate, having a number of important connotations. At various times, the word kavanah has been defined as concentration, attention, devotion, and intention. It actually means all of these things, and more, the sum being greater than its parts. In many places in this book, we have translated kavanah as concentration. Here, however, it appears to have the connotation of actual meditation, and a similar use of the word seems to be found in the writings of the Ari. The Gate of Kavanah speaks of meditation based on light, where one elevates the mind from one light to a higher one. It is significant to note that two of these lights are called Bahir, brilliant, and Zohar, radiant, alluding to the two most important Kabbalistic classics. One ascends until he reaches the infinite, which is called Ein Sof. Since one reaches this level by meditating on light, the highest level is often spoken of as the infinite light, or Ein Sof, in Kabbalistic literature. There is considerable speculation as to the symbolism of light in the spiritual realm, but from this text, it appears to be related primarily to the meditative technique through which it is visualized. Although a number of different types of light are mentioned in this brief essay, they are not clearly defined. The Gate of Kavanot, however, appears to have been well known to Rabbi Moshe de Leon, best known as the publisher of the Zohar. In his Shekel HaKodesh, Holy Coin, written in 1292, he clearly explains the meaning of these types of light. It is significant to note that although the Zohar speaks of different colors with regard to fire, its system appears quite different from that of its publisher. Correspondence between the lights and the Sefirot. Light. Tov, good. Noga, glow. Kavod, glory. Bahir, brilliance. Zohar, radiance. Chaim, life. Sefirah, chesed, love. Gvura, strength. Tiferet, beauty. Netzach, victory. Hod, splendor. Yesod, foundation. An excerpt from The Gate of Kavanah. When a person sets his mind on something, its essence returns to him. Therefore, if you wish to pray, or if you wish to grasp the true nature of an idea, do the following. Imagine that you yourself are light, and that all of your surroundings on every side are also light. In the middle of this light is a throne of light. Above this throne is a light called Noga, glow. Facing this is another throne. Above the second throne is a light called Tov, good. You are standing between the two. If you wish to take revenge, turn to the Noga. If you wish to seek mercy, turn to the Tov. The words that you speak should be directed toward this light. Now, turn yourself to the right of it, and there you will find another light. This is a light that is called Bahir, brilliant. To its left, you will also find a light. This is a light called Zohar, radiant. Above these two, directly between them, is a light called Kavod, glory. Around it is a light called Chaim, life. Above it is the crown. This is the light that crowns the desires of the mind and illuminates the paths of the imagination, enhancing the radiance, Zohar, of the vision. This light has no end, and it cannot be fathomed. From the glory, Kavod, of its perfection, comes desire, blessing, peace, life, Chaim, and all good, Tov, to those who keep the way of its unification. It is hidden from those who stray from the path of this light, and is transformed into its precise opposite. It then results in rebuke and punishment. The true path is straight, depending on the concentration, kavanah, of the individual. He must know how to concentrate on its truth with attachment of thought and desire, derived from its unfathomable power. According to the strength of his concentration, he will then transmit power through his desire, desire through his knowledge, imagination through his thoughts, strength through his efforts, and fortitude through his contemplation. When there is no other thought or desire intermingled with his concentration, it can become so strong that it can transmit an influence from the infinite, Ein Sof. The entire process is then consciously completed, according to the individual's desire. One must know how to trim away the surrounding fringes, the conscious desires which draw him away from the primary goal. These all come from the individual himself, and he can therefore elevate himself above them through the power of his concentration. He can then probe very deeply and break away from the crooked path. Through the power of his meditation, the individual can then blaze a new path. He elevates himself over them with the power of his concentration, which comes from the glory, kavod, of the perfection of the concealed light. This is a light that cannot be seen, depicted, measured, estimated, or probed, and it has neither boundary or end. It is infinite in every way. An individual thus ascends with the power of his concentration from one thing to the next until he reaches the infinite, Ein Sof. He must then direct his concentration in a proper manner so as to perfect it, so that the highest will should be clothed in his will, and not only that his will should be clothed in the highest will. The highest influx does not descend except when the individual does this correctly. He must bring himself to the highest will in such a manner that the highest will clothes itself in the will of his desire. The highest will and the lower will are then unified. The individual identifies himself with his attachment to the unity. The divine influx can then be transmitted in order to perfect him. The lower will is not perfected when the individual approaches for his own needs. Rather, one must approach while clothed in the will and desire to reveal the identification that is hidden in the concealed mystery. When one approaches in this manner, the highest will then brings itself close to him. It increases his power and motivates his will until he can accomplish anything. This will even include things that he himself desires, in which the highest will does not have any portion. Regarding this, it is written, "He who strives for good shall seek the will." Proverbs chapter 11, verse 27. For, according to the degree of one's attachment in the proper manner to the highest will, this will clothes itself in him. Then, through the power of his concentration, it transmits to him anything that he desires. One is thus able to transmit the influx that crowns the hidden desires and essences, with the way of wisdom, the spirit of understanding, and the power of knowledge. The individual must be clothed in spirit, ruach, expressing his concentration with words, and making a symbolic act. According to how he does this, the influx will be transmitted from potential to potential, from cause to cause, until the result is completed according to his will. It was in this manner that the early saints would linger an hour before praying. During this period, they would dispel all other thoughts, fixing the paths of their concentration and the power of its direction. They would then spend an hour in prayer, verbally expressing this concentration with words. Finally, they would spend an hour after their prayers, contemplating how the power of their verbally expressed concentration would have a visible effect. The Talmud thus teaches that, since they were saints, Hasidim, their Torah learning preserved itself, and their work blessed itself. This is one of the ways of prophecy. One who accustoms himself to it will be worthy of attaining the prophetic level. An excerpt from the works of Rabbi Moshe de Leon. The Holy Coin. The four appearances of light are the radiant Zohar lights, which are hidden and concealed. These come into being from the mysterious reality of God's essence, which is also hidden and concealed. This is like the glow, noga, that surrounds the eye's vision in the concealed sphere of radiance, Zohar. It is not openly seen. This sphere of radiance stands between four paths of concentration, kavanah, involving this glow, noga. These involve the light that is scintillating, muvhak, brilliant, bahir, radiant, zohar, like the radiance of the sky. There are four types of radiance, zohar. They are bahir light, zohar light, muvhak light, and light that receives zohar. Physical light always receives from spiritual light. Thus, there are four different types of fire, and these are the ones that God showed to Moses. These are red fire, yellow fire, white fire, and black fire. God told Moses about these four types of fire and showed them to him on Mount Sinai. These four types of fire parallel the four illuminations under discussion. In a mystical sense, these four lights are the four lights of the hosts that God showed Moses. The light under discussion, however, is hidden and concealed. It rotates the true Zohar light when the light seen by the closed eye rotates. This is a hidden light that is never revealed. It cannot be seen in any way, other than in a concealed manner. It is regarding this hidden, concealed light that Moses said, "Show me your glory." Exodus chapter 33, verse 18. This is the light that gives rise to the four illuminations under discussion, which are Bahir light, Zohar light, Muvhak light, and light that receives Zohar. These are the lights that can be seen. Bahir light is the shining glass, ispaklaria, which has the power to reflect. Zohar light is a glass that absorbs light. It then cannot be recognized except when it is revealed near a shining light. Muvhak light is a shining glass in which the color of all lights is recognizable. Through its colors, all other glasses are illuminated. Light that receives Zohar is a glass that does not shine. It receives all the other lights like a reflector that receives the radiance, Zohar, of the sun, and it can be recognized in it. The same is true of the light that receives Zohar. This light absorbs all other colors, and they are then visible inside it. When other colors come near it and shine into it, it absorbs them and gathers them in. The mark of each one is then recognizable in it. This light is more readily revealed, since it is not very bright. Zohar light, on the other hand, is so bright that the eye cannot grasp it in any way. It is like the light of the sun, which is so intense, zahir, that the eye has no power to see it. Light that is less bright, however, can be grasped and revealed, and the eye is able to see it. Whoever looks at this color can recognize the other colors, which are hidden and concealed in it, and which stand over it. Contemplate that the other, higher colors can be recognized inside it. Still, they never appear to be scintillating, muvhak, and radiant, zohar, since they must be seen through visible light. The prophets and other enlightened individuals only saw through this light that receives zohar, which is the glass that does not shine. What they actually saw, however, was the zohar, the shining glass. When you look into the steps, you will find that all is one. Gaze at a candle. You will find the black light at the bottom and the bahir light at the top. But it is all one mystery and one light, and there is no separation whatsoever. 2. Gates of Light. One of the most important teachings of the Kabbalah involves the 10 Sefirot, divine emanations. It is therefore surprising to find that they hardly seem to find any place in Kabbalah meditation. Although there are some allusions, they are usually tenuous at best. There are a number of hints that the great early Kabbalists meditated on the Sefirot, using them as a ladder to reach the highest levels, but very little is mentioned about the method that they used. In general, the early literature is silent about the relationship between meditation and the Sefirot. There is, however, one important exception. This is a remarkable book, Sha'arei Orah, Gates of Light, by Rabbi Joseph G. Catalia. Considered one of the greatest Kabbalists of all time, G. Catalia was born in Medina Celi in Castile. It was there that, as a young man, he came under the influence of Abulafia, who apparently taught him his entire system. Shortly after this, he wrote his first book, Ginat Egos, The Nut Garden, a title suggested by the verse, I went down into the nut garden. Song of Songs, chapter 6, verse 11. Besides this, the word Ginat is an acronym of Gematria, Notrikion, Temurah, three important methods of letter manipulation used by Abulafia. It is significant to note that the word Ginat is used in the same manner by Rabbi Baruch Targumi, one of Abulafia's teachers. G. Catalia's most important work, however, was his Sha'arei Orah, which has been published in over a dozen editions. This book consists of an exposition of the 10 Sefirot, and the 10 divine names that are associated with them. Strongly influenced by the Bahir, Sha'arei Orah can actually be considered to be a key to this ancient Kabbalah classic. The Ari calls Sha'arei Orah the key to the mystical teachings. At first, Sha'arei Orah seems to be just another book on the theoretical Kabbalah, without any practical application. In a number of places, however, the author hints at the practical applications of this system. At the end of the book, he explicitly states, I have given over to you 10 keys, and with them you can enter gates that are otherwise closed. Upon close examination, then, the book can be taken as a guide for those who wish to ascend spiritually through meditation on the ladder of the Sefirot. Indeed, in the unpublished fourth part of his Sha'arei Kedusha, Rabbi Chaim Vital presents 2 selections from this book in precisely this light. Abulafia might also have been alluding to this method when he speaks of using the 10 names in meditation. When examined in this light, Sha'arei Orah can be seen in its entirety as a guide to meditation on the Sefirot. The words and divine names associated with the Sefirot can be viewed as guides, helping one to meditate on particular Sefirot. They provide mental or verbal images upon which one can meditate, although the precise method of doing so is not explicitly defined. It is interesting to note that this book also exerted a profound influence on the Christian Kabbalists. In 1516, 45 years before the first Hebrew edition was printed, a Latin translation was published. This had been translated by Paul Ricci, and it came to the attention of the Christian mystic Johann Reuchlin. When a group of Dominicans tried to convince Pope Leo X to confiscate and burn all Jewish books, Reuchlin made use of the Latin version of Sha'arei Orah to convince the Pope of the value of Judaic teachings. As one of the few Kabbalistic works published in translation, Sha'arei Orah exerted a powerful influence on many occult groups in Europe. There are a number of places where Sha'arei Orah speaks specifically about meditative techniques, and these will be presented here. The Sefirot and associated names of God. 1. Keter, crown. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. 2. Chokhmah, wisdom. Yah. 3. Binah, understanding. Elokim. 4. Chesed, love, El. 5. Gvura, strength, Elokim. 6. Tiferet, beauty, Adoshem. 7. Netzach, victory, Hashem Tzivakot. 8. Hod, splendor, Elokim Tzivakot. 9. Yesod, foundation, Shaddai, El Chai. 10. Malchut, kingship, Adoshem. Excerpts from The Gates of Light. You have asked me, my brother, beloved of my soul, to enlighten you regarding the path involving God's names, so that through them you will gain what you wish and reach what you desire. Since I see that your intent is upright and good, I will go beyond your request and show you where the light can be found, explaining what God desires and what he does not desire. When you grasp this knowledge, then you will be among those close to God. You will call, and God will answer. Jeremiah chapter 58, verse 9. The earlier sages had many holy names, which they had received as a tradition from the prophets. These included the name of 72, the name of 42, the name of 12, and many other holy names. Through these names, they were able to bring about miracles and wonders, but they never used them for their own needs. Such was reserved for a time of evil decree, or to sanctify God's holy name. The boundary of truth and the tradition of the covenant is this: if one wishes to attain what he desires through the use of God's names, he must first study the Torah with all this might, so that he can grasp the meaning of every one of God's names mentioned in the Torah. These names are Ehyeh, Yah, Adoshem, El, Eloah, Elokim, Shaddai, and Tzivakot. One must know and understand that each of these names is like a key for all of his needs, no matter what they are. When a person contemplates these names, he will find that the entire Torah and all the commandments depend on them. If one knows the meaning of all these names, he will understand the greatness of He who spoke and brought the universe into being. He will fear God, yearning and pining to bind himself to Him through his knowledge of these names. He will then be close to God, and his prayers will be answered. Regarding this, it is written, I will raise him up because he knows my name. Psalm 91, verse 14. The verse does not say, I will answer him, but I will raise him up. Furthermore, it does not say, because he pronounced my name, but because he knows my name. This is because the main thing is knowledge. When a person has such a knowledge, then he can call and God will answer him. This means that when he needs something and concentrates on the name associated with his need, he will be answered. The first name is closest to all created things. It is through this name that one enters the presence of God the King. Other than through this name, there is no other way whatsoever that one can see the face of the blessed King. This name is Adoshem. It is the name associated with Malchut, kingship, the lowest Sefirot. The unique name, Yud and He and Vav and He, denotes the essence of our blessed Creator, and everything depends on it. However, the first gate, and the opening through which one enters to reach God, is the name Adoshem. This is the lowest level of the divine. From the level of Adoshem and above, we find the mystery of unity. Below this is the world of separation. The name Adoshem is like a storehouse and a treasury. It holds all influx and every emanation that is transmitted through all spiritual channels from Yud and He and Vav and He. There are 3 names, one above the other. Adoshem is on the bottom. Yud and He and Vav and He is in the middle, and Ehyeh is on top. It is from the name Ehyeh that all kinds of sustenance emanate, coming from the source, which is the infinite, Ein Sof. It then proceeds through a series of steps until it reaches the blessed name, Yud and He and Vav and He. From the name Yud and He and Vav and He, all spiritual channels flow, and the flux is transmitted to the name Adoshem. The name Adoshem is therefore the storehouse containing all of the king's devices, and it is the essence that distributes these to all creation. It nourishes and sustains all things through the power of Yud and He and Vav and He that is in it. It is by the order of Adoshem that all who approach to attach themselves to Yud and He and Vav and He may enter and leave. There is absolutely no way that one can attach himself to Yud and He and Vav and He except through Adoshem. Adoshem is therefore the treasury of the unique name, Yud and He and Vav and He. It is the palace in which Yud and He and Vav and He dwells. It is for this reason that whenever the name Yud and He and Vav and He appears in the Torah, it is read as Adoshem. This is because one who seeks Yud and He and Vav and He only finds it in the name Adoshem. There are a total of 54 ways in which the 4 letters of Yud and He and Vav and He can be permuted. Since each of these permutations contains 4 letters, all of them yield a total of 216 letters. These 54 names are the mystery of the transmission of power to all that exists in all creation. They are like a soul to the 216 letters of the name of 72 triplets. One who attaches himself to Adoshem is worthy of eternal life. This is alluded to in the verse, "And you, who are attached to Yud and He and Vav and He, your God, you are all alive today." Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 4. Our sages question this and ask, is it then possible to attach oneself to the divine presence? Although their question is valid, this is only true in a homiletic sense. In a mystical sense, one can indeed attach himself. God therefore said, "You shall fear Yud and He and Vav and He, your God. Him shall you serve, and to him you shall attach yourself." Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20. Know and believe that there is a method involving the mystical purification of the limbs, through which it is possible for a human being to attach himself to the divine presence, even though it is a consuming fire. Actually, it is a fire that provides delight and ecstasy to those who attach themselves to it with a pure soul. It is therefore called the lamp of God. It is what lights the lamp of the soul. The soul is then attached to it, and this is its desire. One who wishes to perceive eternal life should attach himself to the attribute of El Chai, living God, which is associated with the Sefirot of Yesod, foundation. This means that through his prayers, one should bring El Chai into Adoshem. It was regarding this that King David had passion and desire when he said, "My soul thirsts for God, for El Chai." Psalm 42, verse 3. When the attribute Yesod which is called El Chai, is bound to Adoshem, Malchut, then one can draw down all his needs. He can overcome his enemies, and no one can stand up to him. We must bind the Sefirot together, attaching all levels through the attribute of Adoshem, Malchut, kingship. We therefore say, he chooses song of praise, king, Malchut, life, Yesod, of the world. If one wishes to seek a good life, he should bind himself to the attribute of El Chai. When a person is attached to Adoshem in purity, then he is also attached to El Chai. It is thus written, and you, who are attached to Yud and He and Vav and He, your God, you are all alive, Chai, today. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 4. If one wishes to attain these three things, life, food, or children, he cannot attain them as a matter of right in this world. They cannot be attained through merit, which involves the tribunal on high. How then can he attain these things? One must elevate his concentration, kavanah, higher and higher. He must probe deeper than the future world, binah, understanding, until he reaches the level of keter, crown, which is ehyeh, which is associated with the infinite, Ein Sof. One thus reaches the level of the 13 attributes of mercy. One of these 13 attributes is called destiny, mazal. The sages therefore teach, life, children, and food do not depend on merit, but on destiny. There is one thing that you must know and understand. Even though we say that one who wishes to attain what he desires from God should concentrate on a particular divine name, this does not mean that he should concentrate on that name and go no farther. But the true intent is this. One must concentrate on the name associated with the thing that he needs. He must then elevate his concentration on that name until the top of the 10 Sefirot. He then reaches the highest source, which is called the source of desire. When one reaches the source of desire, then his request and the desire of his heart are fulfilled. This is the meaning of the verse, you open your hand, yadecha, and satisfy all life desire. Psalm 145, verse 16. Do not read yadecha, your hand, but yodecha, your yod. This means that God opens the mystery of the yod in the name Yud and He and Vav and He, which is the source of desire. He then fulfills the desire of all who ask. One who wishes to attain from God what he desires must contemplate the 10 Sefirot. He must transmit will and desire from the highest to lowest, until he brings it to the final desire, which is the name Adoshem. The Sefirot are then blessed through him, and he is blessed through the Sefirot. This is the mystery of the verse, he who blesses himself on earth, Malchut, blesses himself by the God of Amen. Isaiah chapter 65, verse 16. The word Amen alludes to the mystery through which blessing is transmitted from the names Ehyeh and Yud and He and Vav and He to the name Adoshem. From this, you learn that when one prays, he must concentrate in the manner that I have described. He must unify the Sefirot and bring them close to each other. When a person prays, he must concentrate and ascend from Sefirah to Sefirah, from desire to desire. He must continue in this manner until in his heart he reaches the source of the highest will, which is called the infinite, Ein Sof. King David therefore said, a song of steps, from the depths I call you, O God. Psalm 130, verse 1. He is saying that he is calling God from his depths, that is, from the highest source, which is called the infinite, Ein Sof. This is the depth which is the apex of the Yud of Yud and He and Vav and He. He therefore said, "From the depths I call you Yud and He and Vav and He." And how does one concentrate? One does so through a series of steps in an upward direction. He enters through the final He of the name, which is associated with Malchut, kingship. He then ascends from attribute to attribute, from Sefirah to Sefirah, until his mind elevates itself to the apex of the Yud, which is Keter, crown. This is called the infinite, Ein Sof, and it is the mystery of the depths. King David therefore called this a song of steps. These depths denote everything that is hidden, concealed, and difficult to grasp. It is therefore written, "That which was is far off. Deep, deep, who can find it?" Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 24. The great mystery that includes all this is the verse, "Very deep are your thoughts." Psalm 92, verse 6. You already know that the mystery of thought is the Yud of the name Yud and He and Vav and He. Now that we have taught you this, we can return to the main idea. When one concentrates, he must focus all his thoughts, until with absolute concentration, he reaches the source of will. This is the apex of the Yud, and it is the depth of thought. Regarding this, it is written, "From the depths I call you, O God." The Tetragrammaton, Yud and He and Vav and He, is like the trunk of a tree, while the other divine names are like its branches. The name Yud and He and Vav and He is occasionally connected to Adoshem. Sometimes Yud and He and Vav and He comes first and is followed by Adoshem. An example of this is the verse, "Yud and He and Vav and He, Adoshem, is my strength. He makes my feet like hinds." Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 19. Another example is, "God is to us a God of deliverance," and to Yud and He and Vav and He, Adoshem, are the issues of death. Psalm 68, verse 21. Still another is, "My eyes are to you, Yud and He and Vav and He, Adoshem. In you I have taken refuge." Psalm 141, verse 8. When the two names are pronounced together, Yud and He and Vav and He is not read as Adoshem, but as Elohim. This alludes to the attribute of Binah, understanding, which is being united with the attribute of Malchut, kingship, which is called Adoshem. Through Binah, it is unified with Yud and He and Vav and He. When one pronounces Elohim Adoshem in this order, the influx descends through all the Sefirot, from the highest to the lowest, until the influx of blessing and essence reaches the name Adoshem. When this occurs, all the world is enhanced with a perfect blessing. At other times, Adoshem is pronounced first, followed by Yud and He and Vav and He. An example of this is, Abraham said, "Adoshem, Yud and He and Vav and He, what will you give me?" Genesis chapter 15, verse 2. Another example is, Adoshem, Yud and He and Vav and He, you have begun to show your servant your greatness. Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 24. Still another is, Adoshem, Yud and He and Vav and He, destroy not your people. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 26. When the name is pronounced Adoshem Elohim, it denotes the mystery of the ascent of the Sefirot and their unification with one another, until a person's concentration reaches the source of will. This is like an individual who wishes to grasp a place in the supernal light and attach himself to it. The name Adoshem, Malchut, kingship, yearns to elevate itself and grasp onto Binah, understanding. Yud and He and Vav and He is then vocalized as Elohim. When the name is written Yud and He and Vav and He, Adoshem, it denotes the mystery of the divine influx of Binah, understanding, which descends through the channels and reaches the name Adoshem. When this happens, all the universe is blessed. The great, glorious, fearsome name, Yud and He and Vav and He, is a name that included all the other divine names that are mentioned in the Torah. There is no divine name that is not included in the name Yud and He and Vav and He. Realizing this, you must be aware how careful you must be when you pronounce this name. When you pronounce the name Yud and He and Vav and He, you take on your lips all the holy names. It is then as if your mouth and tongue are carrying all the holy names, upon which depend the universe and everything in it. When you realize this, you will understand the mystery of the third commandment. You shall not take the name of Yud and He and Vav and He, your God, in vain. Exodus chapter 20, verse 7. For how can a lowly, insignificant creature take on his tongue the great name Yud and He and Vav and He, which upholds all creation, both on high and below? Even more so, how can one use it for his own needs, as an axe with which to cut? You must realize that when one pronounces the name Yud and He and Vav and He, sounding out its letters with the motions of his tongue, he agitates all the universes, both on high and below. All the angels rise up and ask each other, "Why is the universe trembling?" And they answer, "Because some wicked person is pronouncing the explicit name, sounding it out with his lips." As a result of these vibrations, every name and appellation that depends on it reverberate, and heaven and earth tremble. Then they say, "And who is this wicked person who makes the universe tremble, pronouncing the great name without reason? He is this wicked person, who did these sins on this day, and those misdeeds another day." As a result, all of this individual's sins are recalled. When you shake the trunk of a tree, you cause all of its branches and leaves to tremble. Likewise, when a person pronounces the name Yud and He and Vav and He, all the host on high and below tremble, since they all depend on it. The only place where this was not true was in the holy temple. When the high priest would pronounce this name in the temple, all the host of heaven would rejoice and would receive the divine influx. For in doing this, the high priest would rectify all the supernal channels, and blessing would be brought to everything in the universe. Many saints were afraid to touch the attribute of Adoshem when it was alone. They would therefore transmit love and good to it from the highest Keter, crown, and from the other names associated with mercy. King David did this when he said, "But you, Adoshem, Malchut, kingship, are El, Chesed, love, full of compassion and mercy, slow to anger, with great love and truth. Turn to me and have mercy on me." Psalm 86, verse 15. If you understand this, you will enter many chambers. You will know how the prophets and saints would direct the channels of love and mercy to the name Adoshem, so that they would not enter into it when it was dry and empty. It was in this manner that the Talmudic sages knew how to rectify the channels and direct all the names associated with mercy until everything would be transmitted into the name Adoshem. Since they knew how to concentrate through all the channels to the name Adoshem, they could do anything they wished in the world. The blessed name, Yud and He and Vav and He, which is the mystery of the middle pillar, is called Atah, thou. This is the mystery of all of God's banners and appellations. He clothes himself in them all, and prides himself in them, this being the mystery of the word Atah. This mystery teaches that everything in the universe and every Merkavah was created through permutations of the letters of the alphabet. This is the Kabbalah tradition found in the Sefer Yetzirah, which speaks of the permutation and cycling of the letters. Through the permutations of the 22 alphabets, heaven and earth and all their host, on high and below, were created. Know this and ponder it carefully. Letter permutations are therefore a door to the most profound depths. Through them, he can discern the depth of wisdom and the wonder of the creation of everything that was formed, each thing according to its kind. He can also discern the structure of every Merkavah and the mystery of every male and female. The permutations and cyclings of the 22 letters are all concealed in the mystery of the word Atah. The first 2 letters of this word are Aleph and Taf, the first and last letters of the alphabet, and the beginning and end of every Merkavah. This is the meaning of what the Sefer Yetzirah says, 10 Sefirot of nothingness. Their end is embedded in their beginning, and their beginning in their end, like a flame bound to a coal. All this is the mystery of the 22 letters, and the 5 channels of Binah, understanding. Through these, all forms of the Merkavah are depicted, as well as all things, both on high and below. This is the mystery of the Torah. It is written with the 22 letters and consists of 5 books. 5 is the numerical value of He, the last letter of Atah. All of these together, the Aleph, the Taf, and the He, spell out Atah. Contemplate on the keys that I have given you here. With them, you can open many gates, sealed with many locks, since everyone is not worthy to enter through them. The Sefirah of Chokhmah, wisdom, is called somethingness in the Torah. The reason for this is that the first Sefirah, Keter, crown, is hidden from the eyes of all. Since no one can contemplate it, it is called nothingness. If a person seeks Keter, crown, he will find nothingness. No one can contemplate the depth of its depth and excellence. It is for this reason that it is not connotated by any letter in the alphabet, but only by the apex of the Yud. The beginning of thought, and the first revelation of the array, is the second Sefirah, which is called Chokhmah, wisdom. Gazing at the Merkavah is called a descent, and the sages therefore speak of descending to the Merkavah. One who gazes in the Merkavah must first ascend to the highest level, which is the place of the light. It is here that he receives the influx of insight. Only then can he descend and look into the Merkavah. The Sefirah of Chokhmah, wisdom, is called fear. The reason for this is that when a person's thoughts reach this high and deep place, he has reason to fear, lest his thoughts become confounded, running and meditating beyond the proper measure. Regarding this, the Sefer Yetzirah says, 10 Sefirot of nothingness. Close your mouth, that it not speak, and your heart, that it not think. And if your heart runs, return to your place. One must return to his place, since he is entering a place of fear and terror when one thinks of its depth and essence. Therefore, wherever you find the word fear, contemplate that it is referring to the Sefirah of Chokhmah, wisdom. It is a place of fear, since it has no measure or boundary, and therefore, the mind does not have the power to grasp it. This is alluded to in the verse, He says to man, Behold, the fear of God is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. Job, chapter 28, verse 28. 3. Rabbi Isaac of Akko. A contemporary of both Abulafia and Jikatalia, Rabbi Isaac of Akko was the third great Kabbalist of that period to speak of meditation. Although he does not provide any clear examples of his methodology, he does speak of many important meditative principles, and his writings have had an important influence on the meditative Kabbalists. Even more than Abulafia and Jikatalia, he was renowned as a master of letter permutations, and Rabbi Chaim Vital taught that when Rabbi Isaac of Akko would practice the art of tziruf, he would be visited by angels. Rabbi Isaac was born in the Holy Land and grew up in Akko, which had an important Jewish community. The city had come under the Kabbalistic influence of the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who had arrived in the Holy Land in 1267. Considered one of the brightest students in Akko, Rabbi Isaac studied in the academy of Rabbi Shlomo Petit, and there is some evidence that he also studied with the Ramban himself. It is interesting to note that while Abulafia studied the Guide to the Perplexed under Rabbi Hillel of Verona, one of its staunchest defenders, Rabbi Isaac of Akko was a disciple of Rabbi Hillel's major opponent in the dispute raging over Maimonides' philosophical system. Living in Akko, Rabbi Isaac was surrounded by this controversy. His master, Rabbi Shlomo Petit, had seized on the fact that Maimonides both quoted and praised Aristotle. Since Aristotle's works are often diametrically opposed to the teachings of Judaism, Petit condemned Maimonides' works as being heretical. He traveled to Europe to gain support, seeking to place a ban on the learning or teaching of the Guide. Maimonides was not without his supporters, however, and the controversy virtually tore the community of Akko into two opposing factions. Ultimately, Maimonides' supporters won out, and in the summer of 1289, a ban was pronounced against Petit, prescribing any further attacks on the Guide. Testimonials in favor of Maimonides' classic were sent to Barcelona, most probably to the Rashba. The city of Akko had long been an important scene of conflict between the Crusaders and the Saracens. It had finally been wrested from the Muslims in 1191 by King Richard the Lionhearted, and had subsequently enjoyed a century of peace, during which the Jewish community prospered. However, on May 18, 1291, the 18th of Sivan, 5051, after a month of siege, it was retaken by the Saracen Al-Malek al-Shraf, and a good portion of both the Jewish and Christian community was put to the sword. The remainder of the populace was imprisoned, and included among them was Rabbi Isaac of Akko. It appears that Rabbi Isaac remained in the Holy Land for a few years after this. From there he went to Italy, where we find him in 1305. He then traveled through Toledo, and it was at this time that he met with Rabbi Moshe de Leon, publisher of the Zohar. Although Isaac of Akko does not mention Abulafia by name, He is highly critical of Jikatalia's Ginat Egos, Nut Garden, which was written under Abulafia's influence. Rabbi Isaac complains of Jikatalia's extensive use of divine names and writes, "If I had not heard that he is God-fearing, I would say that when he does this, he is not among those who do not fear God." Later, however, when Jikatalia lived in Segovia, and probably after he had written Sharei Orah, Gates of Light, Rabbi Isaac counts him among the greatest Kabbalists of his generation. Since both Abulafia and Isaac of Akko were contemporaries who spoke of meditative techniques, it would be interesting to seek a connection between the two. One possibility is that they both had the same teacher, Rabbi Baruch Targumi. I have a fragment where Rabbi Isaac of Akko discusses the 7 mystical seals, which he attributes to Nochaniel Gaon, and which are elsewhere attributed to the Ramban. Rabbi Isaac states that he heard an explanation as to the meaning of these seals from a certain Rabbi Baruch. In his commentary on the Torah, Rabbi Isaac likewise speaks of Rabbi Baruch in a number of places. It seems evident that this is the name Rabbi Baruch Targumi, who was Abulafia's teacher. There are a number of places where Rabbi Isaac's teachings seem to parallel those of Abulafia. Both taught that prophecy can exist in any place, and that the midrashic doctrine that prophecy can only be attained in the Holy Land is actually speaking of a spiritual level. The initial letters of the Hebrew words for beginning, middle, end, Rosh, Toch, Sof, spell out the word seter, meaning mystery, and this too is discussed by both in the same manner. The name of 72 triplets contains a total of 216 letters, which is the numerical value of fear, Yirah, and lion, Aryeh. This too appears in the works of both Abulafia and Isaac of Akko. All of this could be coincidence, either discovered independently or the product of independent traditions. There is one gematria, however, which both of them use, and since it involves a foreign word, it is difficult to imagine it coming from 2 independent traditions. The Talmud states that the angel Metatron is called Na'ar, meaning a youth or child, since both words have a numerical value of 320. Both Abulafia and Isaac of Akko point out that this is also the numerical value of sheikh, which in Arabic means an elder. Metatron, the youth, is therefore actually an elder. It would be difficult to say that 2 individuals would independently arrive at the same gematria, and it therefore seems highly probable that Isaac of Akko either took it from Abulafia's writings, or that they both received it from the same source. It is very possible that Rabbi Isaac learned of Abulafia's teachings from the author of Sha'arei Tzedek, Gates of Righteousness, who lived in the Holy Land. Both were in the Holy Land at the same time, and there are important similarities between Sha'arei Tzedek and Isaac of Akko's Otzar Chaim, Treasury of Life. Thus, for example, both books, speaking of man's inability to perceive the divine, cite the example of a bat who can see in the dark but is blinded by daylight. Another idea that is almost too similar to be coincidence involves the philosophers who would use wine to help them resolve difficult problems, as discussed in Sha'arei Tzedek. Rabbi Isaac almost paraphrases this, writing, "I heard that when one of the most spiritual of the philosophical sages was confronted with a difficult problem, he would drink a cup of strong wine and fall asleep with his thoughts on that subject. While in a state of semi-sleep, full understanding would come to him, and then he would awaken and write it down." Since Otzar Chaim was written at least 10 years after Sha'arei Tzedek, it is highly probable that Isaac of Akko saw this in the earlier text. One of Rabbi Isaac of Akko's important teachings involves hishtavut, a term derived from the root shava, meaning equal. The term denotes making all things equal for oneself, and can be translated as equanimity, or more accurately, as stoicism. It involves total indifference to all outside influences, good or bad. This is seen by Rabbi Isaac as a prerequisite for any true level of meditation, an idea that is mentioned by Abulafia and discussed at length by Albertini. The idea of hishtavut is also found in earlier non-Kabbalistic sources, the earliest being Chovot HaLevavot, Duties of the Heart, by Rabbi Bachya ibn Pakuda. Actually, however, this concept is also found in the Talmud, where it is called overcoming one's natural tendencies. Thus, the Talmud relates that the great mystic Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana, the central figure of the Hechalot, said that this was one of the main traits responsible for his attainments. The Talmud also teaches that the mysteries involving the name of 42 can only be given over to one who has attained this level of stoicism. In another place, the Talmud speaks of prayer being answered immediately in a mystical manner, and again states that the reason was because the individual leading the prayers had been able to overcome his tendencies. The Talmud clearly states that those who attain this level of stoicism are able to radiate spiritually. It teaches, regarding those who are insulted but do not insult, who hear themselves scorned but do not respond, who serve God with love and rejoice in suffering. It is written, "Those who love God shall be like the sun, when it shines forth with all its strength." Judges chapter 5, verse 31. This teaching had a profound effect on later Kabbalists. It is discussed at length in Sulam Ha'aliyah, Ladder of Ascent, and Isaac Avako's primary teaching regarding this is quoted in its entirety in the unpublished fourth part of Rabbi Chaim Vital's Sha'arei Kedusha. A similar idea was taught to Rabbi Joseph Caro by his angelic teacher. It is significant to see that this very same idea is also found in early Hasidic teachings. The Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, speaks at length regarding hishtavut, stoicism, and states that this is the intent of the verse usually translated as, "I have set, shiviti, God, before me at all times." Psalm 16, verse 8. According to the Baal Shem, the word shiviti, instead of being translated, "I have set," should be translated, "I have been stoic." The verse then reads, "I have been stoic. God is before me at all times." At first, this interpretation may seem far-fetched to Bible scholars, but actually it makes a number of other very difficult verses much more understandable. Thus, instead of, "I have placed," shiviti, "and have quieted my soul," Psalm 131, verse 1, we can now read this verse, "I have become stoic and have quieted my soul." Another verse where this interpretation fits well is, "I have chosen a path of faith. Through your judgments I have become stoic." Psalm 119, verse 30. The same is true of the verse in Isaiah, "I made myself stoic, shiviti, like a lion until morning." Isaiah chapter 38, verse 13. In all these verses, it would be very difficult to translate shiviti as "I have placed." In a number of places, Rabbi Isaac speaks of mitbodedim, or meditators, as if there were regular organized groups of these individuals. The very fact that so many Kabbalistic schools contemporary to him speak of various meditative techniques also seems to support this. In a number of places, he also speaks of the science of letter combination, tziruf, citing this as an important means for attaining enlightenment. Rabbi Isaac Avako wrote a number of books, none of which were ever published, except for fragments in scholarly journals. His best-known work is Me'irat Einayim, Light of the Eyes, a commentary on the Torah explaining the teachings of the Ramban. Another important Kabbalistic work is his Otzar Chaim, Treasury of Life, which consists mostly of mysteries revealed to him while in a meditative state. He also wrote commentaries on Sefer Yetzirah and Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, an ancient midrash. Parts of these have been published in journals. Highly significant is his autobiographical Divrei Yamim, Chronicles, which he mentions in his Otzar Chaim, but no manuscript of this exists. Also mentioned there is another work, Chaim Deoraita, Life of the Torah, which is not noted by historians, but may be the mystical unknown book of his that is occasionally quoted by the Kabbalists. Teachings. An excerpt from Light of the Eyes. I, the insignificant Isaac, son of Solomon, of Akko, proclaim this both to individuals and the masses, who wish to know the mystery of binding one's soul on high. One can attach his thoughts to God, and when one does so consistently, there is no question that he will be worthy of the world to come, and God's name will be with him constantly, both in this world and in the next. You should constantly keep the letters of the unique name in your mind, as if they were in front of you, written in a book with Torah Ashurit script. Each letter should appear infinitely large. When you depict the letters of the unique name, Yud and He and Vav and He, in this manner, your mind's eye should gaze on them, and at the same time, your heart should be directed toward the infinite being, Ein Sof. Your gazing and thought should be as one. This is the mystery of true attachment, regarding which the Torah says, "To him you shall attach yourself." Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 20. If you are able to do this, no evil will befall you. You will not be subject to errors caused by logic or emotion, and you will not be the victim of accidents. As long as you are attached to God, you are above all accidents and are in control of events. You must respect God and be careful not to attach your thoughts to Him when you are not in a clean place. Do not do so in filthy alleys, when your hands are not clean, or when you are in the presence of idols. I heard the following from a pious sage who had served Rabbi Isaac the Blind, son of the Ra'avad, Rabbi Abraham ben David of Poskerez. Rabbi Isaac had been born blind and had never seen with his physical eyes. Whenever he would go any place, he would tell his attendant, "When we pass by a place of idolatry, quicken your pace as much as you can." It appears to me that this was done for the glory of God. His thoughts were always bound to God, and because of the unclean spirit that dwells in the idols, he could not think such thoughts while in proximity to them. This was a place of ultimate uncleanness, while his thoughts were on the route of ultimate holiness. He would therefore hurry away from there, so that he could return to his normal state of mind. You may ask why one should bind his thoughts to the Tetragrammaton more than any other name. The reason is that this name is the cause of causes and the source of all sources. Included in it are all things, from Keter, crown, the highest Sefirah, to the lowliest gnat. Blessed be the name of the glory of his kingdom, forever and ever. It is regarding this name that the psalmist said, "I have placed Yud and He and Vav and He before me at all times." Psalm 16, verse 8. This alludes to what we have said, that his eyes and heart were always directed toward God, and it is as if the name, Yud and He and Vav and He, was written before him. When an individual is worthy of the mystery of attachment, dveikut, he can also be worthy of the mystery of stoicism, hishtavut. After he is worthy of stoicism, he can also be worthy of meditation, hitbodedut. And after he is worthy of meditation, he can be worthy of Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit, enlightenment. From there, he can reach the level of prophecy, where he can actually predict the future. In explaining the mystery of Stoicism, Rabbi Avner related the following account. A sage once came to one of the meditators, mitbodadim, and asked that he be accepted into their society. The other replied, "My son, blessed are you to God. Your intentions are good. But tell me, have you attained stoicism or not?" The sage said, "Master, explain your words." The meditator said, "If one man is praising you and another is insulting you, are the two equal in your eyes or not?" He replied, "No, my master. I have pleasure from those who praise me and pain from those who degrade me, but I do not take revenge or bear a grudge." The other said, "Go in peace, my son. You have not attained stoicism. You have not reached a level where your soul does not feel the praise of one who honors you, nor the degradation of one who insults you. You are not prepared for your thoughts to bound on high, that you should come and meditate, hitboded. Go and increase the humbleness of your heart, and learn to treat everything equally until you have become stoic. Only then will you be able to meditate." One who is worthy to reach the level of meditation, hitbodedut, has peace in this life. To reach this level, one must bind himself to 3 traits and keep himself from their opposite. He will then have peace in this world and certainly in the next. These are the 3 traits. One must rejoice in his portion. He must love meditation, and he must flee from position and honor. This involves the subjugation of the heart. Rabbi Isaac of Akko writes in the name of Rabbi Moshe, a disciple of Rabbi Joseph G. Catalia, "If a person's heart impels him to rectify his traits, perfecting his personality and deeds, he should pursue humility to the ultimate degree. He should be insulted, but not insult, hear himself scorned, but not respond. The divine presence will then immediately rest on him, and he will not have to learn from any mortal being, for the Spirit of God will teach him." Elsewhere, Rabbi Isaac of Akko writes, "We found this in the books of the Kabbalists who were worthy of the way of truth. One of the great rectifications for one who wishes to know God is that he should be among those who are insulted but does not insult. This should even be true with regard to people of whom he is not afraid and before whom he has no shame, such as his wife and children. Even if members of his household insult him, he should not answer, except to correct their ways. But inwardly, he should feel no anger, but his heart should always be joyful, attached to God no matter what happens." Parallels. From Rabbi Bachya ibn Pekuda. It is related that one of the Hasidim asked one of his companions, "Have you attained stoicism, hishtavut?" When the other asked the meaning of his question, he explained, "Have you reached a level where praise and insult are equal in your eyes?" The other replied negatively, and he said, "If this is true, then you have not reached the necessary level. Continue to strive in this direction, and you may be able to reach this level. It is the highest level of piety and its desired end." From Rabbi Joseph Caro. "My angelic master taught me this: do not worry about anything in the world, other than that which will influence your worship of God. With regard to all worldly things, everything should be the same as its opposite." This is the mystery of the words of the sage who asked an initiate who wished to involve himself in unifications, yichudim, "Have you attained stoicism?" If a person does not see that all good in the physical world is exactly the same as its evil, it is impossible for him to unify all things. From Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov. "I have been stoic. God is before me at all times." Psalm 16, verse 8. This denotes a level of stoicism with regard to all that befalls a person. Whether people insult him or praise him, it should all be equal. The same is true of eating. Whether he eats sweetmeats or gall, it should all be equal to him. In this manner, one can dispel the evil urge, Yetzer Hara, completely. From Rabbi Eliyahu de Vidas. It is told that one of the Hasidim was once asked, "What was the happiest occasion in your life?" He told the following story. "I was once traveling on a ship along with merchants carrying costly goods. I wished to meditate, hitboded, on my Creator, and I went down into the bowels of the ship, lying there in the lowest place. The young son of one of the merchants stood himself over me, insulting me and spitting in my face. He then uncovered himself and urinated on me. I was astounded at his brazenness. But as God lives, my soul was not downcast as a result of this. After he left, I was exceedingly happy, realizing that my soul had reached a level of true humility. I realized that through this trait, one can walk among the ones who stand. This trait dominated me so much that I felt absolutely nothing whatsoever." 4. Publication of the Zohar. In the 1270s, a number of manuscripts began to circulate among the Kabbalists, creating a tremendous stir. Rumors began to fly that an ancient text had been discovered, stemming from the famed 2nd century mystic, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This remarkable manuscript was being published by an important Kabbalist of that time, Rabbi Moshe de Leon. By 1281, a number of mystical texts were already quoting passages from this text, which soon became known as the Zohar. Even though the manuscripts included some 24 texts, they were considered to be a single body of literature. Stories began to be told how these manuscripts had been hidden in a vault for 1,000 years and had been dug up by an Arabian king and sent to Toledo. Others said that the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, had sent them by ship to his son, but the ship had been diverted, and they ended up in the hands of Rabbi Moshe de Leon. There were also some whispers that Rabbi Moshe himself had written these books, using mystical powers derived from the name of writing. The Zohar itself provides a clue, stating that it should be revealed in preparation for the final redemption, 1,200 years after the destruction of the Second Temple. Since the temple was destroyed in the year 69, this would mean that the Zohar was meant to be revealed in 1269. The secret society, who were guardians of these mysteries, entrusted this task to Rabbi Moshe de Leon, who was possibly a member of this group. Seeing parts of the text and hearing conflicting rumors surrounding it, Rabbi Isaac of Akko decided to investigate the matter. He met with Rabbi Moshe de Leon, and the latter swore that the manuscript was an authentic text from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It is difficult to imagine that a saint such as Rabbi Moshe would violate the third commandment and swear falsely regarding this, no matter what his motive. Excited, Rabbi Isaac asked him to see the original manuscript, a request to which Rabbi Moshe readily agreed. Again, it would hardly seem likely that one would be so ready to display a manuscript that did not exist, or even one that had been forged. Before Rabbi Isaac was able to view the manuscript, however, Rabbi Moshe had died. Upon inquiring as to the manuscripts, he was informed by David of Pancorbo that Rabbi Moshe's widow had claimed that the manuscript had never existed, and that the entire text had been made up. Stunned, Rabbi Isaac decided to explore the matter further. In his search, he is informed by a prominent Kabbalist, Rabbi Joseph Halevi, that he had once tested Rabbi Moshe regarding the Zohar. Claiming to have lost a manuscript, he had Rabbi Moshe write him a new one, and found to be precisely identical to the first. This was a clear indication that the writer had a manuscript from which he had made copies. Encouraged, Rabbi Isaac of Akko is determined to investigate until he comes to a final conclusion. The entire account is in Rabbi Isaac's Divrei Hayamim, Chronicles, and no manuscripts of this text have survived. The pertinent selection, however, was published by Rabbi Abraham Zacuto in his Sefer HaYuchasin, Book of Genealogies, but it was deleted from all editions of this book other than the first edition, which was published by the author in 1510 in Constantinople. Unfortunately, the published account ends abruptly, probably because the author did not have the succeeding pages, and therefore we are not told of Rabbi Isaac of Akko's conclusion. Besides this, however, a number of other points are also left hanging. For example, if Rabbi Moshe did indeed write a copy for himself, what happened to it? Why did no one recall ever having seen it? It seems obvious that none of Rabbi Moshe's contemporaries considered him to have been capable of authoring the Zohar. Whoever claimed that he himself had written it said that he did so through the name of writing, which would enable a person to write in a manner far beyond his natural capabilities. Furthermore, anyone familiar with Rabbi Moshe's writings, which are extensive, immediately sees that his entire system is very different from that of the Zohar. David of Pancorbo's story can be explained in many ways. First of all, it was told third hand, from Rabbi Moshe's wife to that of a certain Joseph, then to Joseph himself, and finally to David, who in turn related it to Rabbi Isaac. This leaves much room for error. And how reliable was the widow? Parchment was quite expensive in those days, and as a result of her intense poverty, she might have sold the manuscripts as a scrap parchment to be erased and reused, as was common in that period. When later asked about the manuscripts, she may have been ashamed to have disposed of a valuable volume in such a manner, and simply made up a story denying that the manuscripts had ever existed, a perfectly natural response. Another possibility is that either David or Joseph were ashamed to admit that they had tried to swindle these priceless documents from Rabbi Moshe's widow. They might have actually obtained them, but would not want an outsider to know that they had done so without informing the widow of their true value. Under Jewish law, this would have been a most reprehensible act, and she could even have sued to recover the manuscripts. One's suspicions are further raised since David speaks very unkindly of Rabbi Moshe, while among his contemporaries in general, he seems to have enjoyed a reputation as a sage and saint. But what was Rabbi Isaac of Akko's own conclusion? This is the most important question. It is critical to any discussion of the Zohar, and has not been sufficiently explored. Looking at his own words, we find that he writes in his Otzar Chaim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai clearly realized that the supernal spiritual forces are very jealous of those who engage in the workings of creation, which is natural wisdom, and in the workings of the Merkavah, which is divine wisdom. Together with his son Rabbi Eliezer and the 10 sages who were with them in the cave, he therefore wrote the Zohar in Aramaic rather than in Hebrew, since these forces do not understand Aramaic. Quoting the Zohar in another place, Rabbi Isaac likewise writes, These are the words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and it is forbidden to depart from them. They are the living words of God, sweeter than honey. For authority was given to him from on high, such as had never been given to any other sage. Compared to the other sages, he is like Moses compared to the other prophets. In a number of other places, he likewise cites the Zohar as the work of Rabbi Shimon. The fact that he quotes the Zohar would in itself not be proof that he accepted it as an authentic ancient text, but he would hardly attribute it to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai so openly if he did not consider it authentic. A most important point is that the Otzar Chaim was written after Rabbi Isaac had investigated the origin of the Zohar. We recall that the entire account of this investigation is quoted from his Divrei Hayamim. This was clearly written before his Otzar Chaim, since in a number of places in the later book, he actually mentions his Divrei Hayamim. We therefore come to a highly significant conclusion. The one person best in the position to investigate the authenticity of the Zohar, after a thorough investigation, openly states that it was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This fact has escaped the notice of historians, and may be highly instrumental in dispelling their doubts as to the authenticity of the Zohar. An excerpt from Sefer HaYuchasin. In the month of Adar, Rabbi Isaac writes that Akko was destroyed in the year 5050, 1291, and the saints of Israel were killed in the most brutal manner. Rabbi Isaac survived, and by 5065, 1305, had been in Navarra, in the province of Asti, Italy. In the year 5065, he came to Toledo. The following account is found in his Divrei Hayamim. He also wrote a Kabbalah text in the year of the angel, Hamalach. Hamalach equals 96. That is, in the year 5096, 1336. It was in his time that Akko was destroyed, and many were taken into captivity, including the Ramban's grandson, and the grandson of Rabbi David, son of Rabbi Abraham, son of Maimonides. He later went to Spain to investigate how the Zohar was found in his time. This had been written by Rabbi Shimon and his son Eliezer in the cave. Happy are those who are worthy of its truth, for in its light they see light. He vouched for its authenticity, although some similar manuscripts had been forged. He said that he knew from tradition that everything written in Aramaic was actually from Rabbi Shimon. That which is in Hebrew, however, was a later addition, since the original book was written completely in Aramaic. These are his words. When I saw the Zohar, I realized that its words are wondrous, drawn from a high place, from the fount that gives without receiving. Blessed be the name of the glory of his kingdom forever and ever. I pursued it, and asked scholars who have large sections of the text about it. These were wondrous words, known by Kabbalah tradition that had been transmitted orally, but they were never permitted to be written down in a book, where they are clearly available to all who can read. I inquired as to their source, but the answers that I received did not all agree. Some said one thing, but others had a completely different story. Some said that the faithful Ramban had sent it from the Holy Land to his son in Catalonia, but that the wind had brought the ship to the land of Aragonia. Others said that it had come to Alicante. Eventually, it came to the hands of the sage Rabbi Moshe de Leon, who is also called Rabbi Moshe of Guadalajara. Others claimed that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai never actually wrote the book, but that Rabbi Moshe knew the name of writing, and through its power had written these wondrous things. In order to fetch a high price and obtain much money for the manuscripts, he had hung his words on great trees. He therefore said that he had transcribed it from a book written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his son Rabbi Eliezer, and their school. When I came to Spain, I arrived in the city of Valladolid, where the king had his capital. It was there that I met Rabbi Moshe, and we became friendly and discussed the Zohar. He made a solemn oath and swore to me, "May God strike me down, and may he continue to do so if the Zohar is not an ancient book written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. At this very moment, the manuscript is in my house, in Avila, where I live. Come and visit me there, and I will show it to you." Soon after this, we separated, and Rabbi Moshe left for Arevalo, on the way home to Avila. He became sick in Arevalo, and died there. When I heard this news, I was deathly upset, but I decided to visit Avila. When I arrived there, I found an elderly sage whose name is Rabbi David of Pancorbo. I found grace in his eyes, and bound him by an oath, saying, "Resolve for me the mystery of the Zohar. Some say one thing, and others say the opposite." Rabbi Moshe himself vowed that the Zohar was authentic, but died before he could verify it to me. I do not know who is reliable and whose word to believe." He replied, "The truth is this. I have determined without question that this book called the Zohar never existed and never came to the hand of Rabbi Moshe. But he was a master of the name of writing, and through the power of that name wrote everything in that book. Listen, and I will tell you how I determined this. Rabbi Moshe was a great spendthrift, tossing away money very generously. Today, his house could have been filled with silver and gold, given to him by the rich who understand the great mysteries that he gave them, written through the name of writing. But tomorrow, it would be completely empty. His wife and daughter are presently virtually naked, hungry and thirsty, and totally destitute. When I heard that he had died in Arevalo, I went to the wealthiest man in the city, whose name is Joseph de Avila, and I said to him, 'The time has finally arrived when you can obtain the priceless original manuscript of the Zohar. Just listen to my advice.' I advised Joseph to instruct his wife, 'Send a generous gift to Rabbi Moshe's widow with your maid.' She did this, and on the next day, he told her to go to the house of Rabbi Moshe's widow and say, 'I would like my son to marry your daughter. If you agree, for the rest of your life, you will never lack food or clothing. I want nothing from you, other than the manuscript of the Zohar, from which your husband transcribed the copies that he distributed.' Joseph told his wife, 'Speak to the mother and daughter separately, and tell them this. Listen carefully to their answer, and see whether or not the two say the same thing.' Rabbi Moshe's widow swore to Joseph's wife and said, 'May God strike me down if I lie to you, but my husband never owned such a book. Everything that he wrote was made up from his own mind.' She related that she would often see him writing without any other book in front of him, and she would ask him, 'Why do you tell people that you are transcribing this from a book? You do not have a book, but are making it all up out of your head. Wouldn't it be better if you say that you are the author of this book, and that it is the product of your intellect? Would you not have more honor?' He would answer, 'If I would reveal my secret, that I am making this up from my own mind, they would not pay any attention to what I write. They would not give me a penny for my writings, since they would consider them nothing more than the product of my imagination. But now, when they hear that it is taken from the Zohar, written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, with Ruach HaKodesh, and that I am only transcribing it, they pay a high price for it. You can see this yourself.' After this, Joseph's wife spoke to Rabbi Moshe's daughter, saying the same things that she had said to her mother. She proposed that the daughter marry her son, and that the mother would be provided with food and clothing. She answered exactly the same as her mother, adding nothing and subtracting nothing. Do you need any clearer evidence than this?" After hearing this, I was confused and dismayed. At the time, I was certain that there had never been any original manuscript. All that existed was that he had composed using the name of writing and had distributed to people. I then left Avila and traveled to Talavera. There, I found an extraordinary sage with a generous heart and a good eye by the name of Rabbi Joseph Halevi, son of the great Kabbalist Rabbi Todros. I asked him about the Zohar. He replied, "You must know and believe that the manuscript of the Zohar which Rabbi Moses had was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It was this manuscript that he transcribed, giving copies to those whom he deemed worthy. I myself tested Rabbi Moshe to see if he was actually copying from an ancient text, or he was merely inventing it through the power of the name of writing. This was the test. He had written for me many large volumes of the Zohar. Many days after he had written them, I hid one of the folios and told him that I had lost it, pressing him to write me another copy. He said, 'If you show me the end of the folio before it and the beginning of the next folio, I will be able to provide you with an exact copy.' I did this, and after several days, he brought me a copy of the missing folio. I compared it with the original copy, and there was absolutely no difference between them. Nothing had been added or left out, and there was no change in wording. Both wording and content was exactly the same, just as if it had been copied from my original. Can there be a better test than this? I then left Talavera and came to Toledo, where I continued to investigate the book, inquiring among the sages and their disciples. There, I also found that the subject was controversial, where opposite opinions were being expressed. I told them about Rabbi Joseph's test, but they replied that it was by no means conclusive. It was quite possible that Rabbi Moshe had used the name of writing to make a copy for himself, and then transcribe from his own copy. He would therefore have a primary text, and it would be just as if he were copying it from an ancient manuscript. But then I discovered something new there. The disciples told me that they had seen an old man, whose name was Jacob, who had been a foremost disciple of Rabbi Moshe, and who had been loved by him like a son. I spoke to him, and he called heaven and earth as his witnesses that the Zohar that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote. The text ends abruptly at this point. 5. Occult schools. The line between meditation and magic is often a tenuous one, and in many areas of Kabbalah, the distinction is difficult to discern. How, for example, do we describe a process where a magical incantation is repeated over and over, and for all practical purposes is used as a mantra? Do we ascribe the effect to the supernatural powers of the name or incantation, or to the meditative state that it induces? This question has never been fully resolved in the Kabbalah, and hence, the magical and meditative schools often appear to overlap. The controversy regarding this type of magical Kabbalah was quite strong in the 1200s. Maimonides was aware of these magical practices, and he denounces them in no uncertain terms, deeming them fit only for the ignorant and unlearned. Abulafia follows this philosophical ideal, describing these cryptic rites in detail and denouncing their practitioners as charlatans of the lowest kind. Isaac of Akko, on the other hand, not only appears to have approved of such practices, but he actually seemed to have used them. This controversy seemed to have lasted well into the 16th century. The Ari tried to abolish these practices completely, and in general, strongly denounced the use of the practical Kabbalah, Kabbalah Ma'asit, as it was called. On the other hand, his chief disciple, Rabbi Chaim Vital, was not only familiar with these practices, but also appeared to have made use of them. Another important Kabbalist of that period, Rabbi Joseph Tzayach, describes a number of magical rites, but warns the reader to keep his motives absolutely pure when using them. There is no question that these rites were widely known and used during that period. One of the foremost practitioners of the practical Kabbalah was Rabbi Joseph de la Reina, who lived in the Holy Land. Many magical formulas are preserved in his name, and it is obvious that he was considered to be one of the greatest masters of these occult arts. Tradition teaches that he made use of his powers in an attempt to bring the final redemption, but was unsuccessful and spiritually injured in the process. According to some accounts, he became an apostate. According to others, he went mad, while others say that he committed suicide. In many texts, his example is cited as a warning against practicing these methods. Many techniques of the magical schools of Kabbalah involved incantations and amulets, and these were often used for trivial and even questionable purposes. Some are for practical things, such as protection while traveling, quieting a stormy sea, or aiding a woman having a difficult childbirth. Others are for opening the heart and similar enlightenment. We also find formulas for protection against one's enemies, or even some for doing away with them. Some of these methods, however, were used for objectives as trivial as catching fish. Others were for questionable goals, such as for luck in gambling. We find formulas for love, some which even involve physical contact with the desired woman. Some practices include the use of grasses, which were possibly psychedelic drugs. In general, it is not difficult to understand why these practices were widely condemned, or at least discouraged by Kabbalists involved in serious meditation and philosophical analysis. Still, the traditions of the magical or practical Kabbalah were very ancient, and although often perverted, still contained methods through which one could attain high meditative states. Such texts as Harba de Moshe, the Sword of Moses, Sefer HaKasdim, Book of the Chaldees, Sefer HaRazim, Book of Secrets, and Sefer HaMalbush, Book of the Garment, had been around for many centuries, possibly even from the Talmudic period. There are many texts involving the practical Kabbalah from the 16th century and earlier, but most of these consist of little more than fragments. In many cases, a book is nothing more than a number of single, unrelated, incomplete pages, bound together in a single volume. For the most part, our knowledge of the practical Kabbalah comes from these fragments. A few small booklets involving these methods have been published, the most notable being Toldot Adam, Generations of Adam, attributed to Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem Tov. One of the most complete collections of such practices is found in a remarkable manuscript, Shoshan Yesod Olam, The Rose, Foundation of the Universe, compiled around 1550 by a certain Rabbi Joseph Tirshom. This book contains over 2,000 magical formulas from the practical Kabbalah. From a number of remarks by the redactor, it appears that the text was compiled from many ancient manuscripts that he had in his hand. Although many of these practices are purely magical, many others combine elements of both magic and meditation, and can therefore be included in the latter category. One interesting practice frequently encountered in this genre of literature involves induced dreams. This is usually referred to as a dream request, sha'alat chalom, where one poses a question and attempts to induce an answer to appear in a dream. The practice itself is very ancient, alluded to even in the Talmud, and examples are found from as early as the 10th century. While the methods for inducing dreams are often purely magical, there are some that have important meditative overtones. This is particularly significant because of the general relationship between prophecy, enlightenment, and dreams. 6. Magic squares. One of the most mysterious Kabbalists of the 16th century was Rabbi Joseph Tzayach, who was also one of the leading rabbinical figures of that period. Aside from his many mystical works, a large body of responsa exist from him in manuscript, and he is known to have responded with the leading religious leaders of that time. The great codist, Rabbi Joseph Caro, quotes a number of his responsa in his Avkat Rochel. Rabbi Joseph Tzayach was apparently born in Jerusalem, and from there he was chosen to serve as rabbi in Damascus. There were 2 Jewish communities in Damascus, one being an immigrant community from Spain, consisting of some 500 families, and the other being the native communities, known as the Most Arabians, who had been there from ancient times. It was the Most Arabian community that chose Tzayach as its leader, but it also seems that he learned many ancient mysteries from them. Tzayach commuted frequently between Damascus and Jerusalem, and we find him in the Holy City on numerous occasions between 1538 and 1555. It was in Jerusalem that he wrote his main Kabbalistic work, Eben HaShoham, the Onyx Stone, in 1538. A year later, he wrote a second book, Tzror HaChaim, the Binding of Life, a mystical commentary on the Talmud. His She'erit Yosef, Remnant of Joseph, an expansion of Eben HaShoham, was written in 1549, also in Jerusalem. Besides these, He also mentions another book, Tzafnat Paneach, which is no longer existent. At least 3 of his books are dedicated to Abraham Castro, who apparently supported Sayach while he was in Jerusalem. This Abraham Castro was a leader of the Jewish community in Egypt and was famed as a philanthropist, distributing more than 3,000 gold florins each year. The Turkish Sultan, Selim I, had conquered Egypt in the Battle of Aleppo in 1517. Soon after this, he appointed Abraham Castro, a Jew of Spanish descent, as master of the mint, responsible for issuing the new Turkish coinage in Egypt. Besides his high government position, Castro was also an important leader in the Jewish community. It was he who secured the appointment of the Radbaz, Rabbi David Abu Zimra, one of the most prominent religious authorities of that period, as chief rabbi of Cairo. From his dedications, it is apparent that he was also a patron of Rabbi Tzayach. As we shall hear, the fact that Tzayach corresponded with the Radbaz is also highly significant. Rabbi Joseph Tzayach apparently was influenced by Abulafia's school, and many ideas that he discusses seem to be taken verbatim from Abulafia's writings. Thus, for example, Abulafia warns that one striving for the highest level, which is called the crown, or keter, must be careful, lest he be cut off, karet. He notes that both words contain the same letters, and the exact same idea is also mentioned a number of times in Sayach's works. Even more obvious is an interpretation of the Hebrew word for letters, which is otiot. The word can be divided into 2, spelling out Taf Aleph, a line of Aleph, and Taf Yud, a line of Yud, which equals 10. This is said to be indicative of a strong relationship between the letters of the alphabet and the 10 digits, which are 10 units. A virtually identical discussion of this is found both in Abulafia's Or HaSechel and in Tzayach's Tzror HaChaim. One book that Tzayach mentions numerous times is the Bahir. It also appears that he was familiar with Shoshan Yesod Olam, or one of its precursors. In one place, he speaks of a book called Yesod Olam, which quotes a certain Aramas, a disciple of Chalatino, the magician. While there is apparently no reference to this magician in Shoshan Yesod Olam, it may be on one of the many missing pages in the manuscript. It is also possible that Shoshan Yesod Olam was an expansion or supplement of an earlier book called Yesod Olam, and this would help explain its name. Particularly noteworthy is the fact that Tzayach does not mention the Zohar. Indeed, in his discussions of chiromancy, he does not follow the Zohar's system, but uses an alternative method, still used by Western occultists. When one takes into account that in his Sulam HaAliyah, Rabbi Judah Albertini also fails to mention the Zohar, this becomes highly significant. The Zohar was the main text of the theoretical Kabbalists, but it appears that the meditative Kabbalists followed a completely different tradition that did not include the Zohar. One reason for this may have been the fact that, at least outwardly, the Zohar makes virtually no reference to meditation. Tzayach's most important work is his Even HaShoham, literally the onyx stone. As he mentions in his introduction, the onyx paralleled the tribe of Joseph in Aaron's breastplate, and the title therefore alludes to the name of the author. He also notes that the word Shoham has the same letters as Hashem, meaning the name, since this is the main point of the book. This text, as well as She'erit Yosef, was explicitly written as a meditative text, as the author clearly states in his introduction. The books contain what appears to be an extremely complex meditative system, but the author purposely conceals the key to its use. Many ideas mentioned in this book appear to be unique in Kabbalah, and it may well represent a tradition that has otherwise been lost. There is much numerical manipulation, gematria, in the book, as well as a numerology that is more sophisticated than anything else that I have seen in any Kabbalistic text. Also found here is considerable insight into common human behavior. An interesting example is his discussion of how the 5 fingers parallel the 5 senses, and the manner in which the two are unconsciously associated. The pinky is associated with hearing, and one therefore cleans one ear with the pinky. The ring finger parallels the sense of sight, and one often uses it to wipe the eye, while the middle finger is used for touch. The forefinger is related to smell and is used to clean the nose. Finally, the thumb is associated with the sense of taste, and it is for this reason that small children often suck their thumbs. This would seem like nothing more than a humorous insight, but the author then associates these 5 concepts with the 5 divisions of the Hebrew alphabet mentioned in the Sefer Yetzirah. He then goes on to associate them with the 5 methods of manipulating letters through tziruf. He concludes by saying, "I have already discussed this, but it is not permissible to put in writing." Even more interesting, and to my knowledge unique, is his association of the 10 Sefirot with the lines of the fingers, as indicated in the figure. These account for the upper 9 Sefirot, and the triplet array parallels that of conventional Kabbalah. The lowest Sefirah, which is Malchut, kingship, is represented by what is called the heart line in conventional chiromancy, or perhaps by the girdle of Venus. Tzayach concludes, "The line on the palm that begins under the middle finger and extends to the pinky indicates the coronet, Malchut. This goes to the east of Ashur, Genesis chapter 2 verse 14, encompassing the 10 holy Sefirot. Surrounding them are the 10 unclean ones. All of this is alluded to in the lines of the palm, and is understood by those who know these mysteries." Tzayach is very reticent when it comes to discussing how this system can be used, and in his introduction openly states that he is obscuring such things. One gets a very strong impression, however, that he advocates contemplating these lines in a meditative sense. One can gaze at his palm until these lines begin to glow, and they actually begin to resemble the Sefirot. The initiate sits, gazing at his own hand, and using the finger lines as steps, he can climb the ladder of the Sefirot until he reaches the highest crown. Even more fascinating is Tzayach's discussion of magic squares. These numerical arrays were well known in ancient India and China, and were introduced to the Western world in the early 1400s by Moschopoulos of Constantinople. It appears that they were also known to the ancient Kabbalists. They are discussed in a number of places in Kabbalistic literature, and when engraved on metal or stone, are often used in amulets. Tzayach himself discusses such uses, and many references can be found in Shoshan Yesod Olam and in Toldot Adam. In his Shnei Luchot Habrit, 2 tablets of the covenant, Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz, a major figure in Kabbalah, discusses a magic square in relation to the mysteries of creation. The most elementary magic square is of the 3rd order, that is, it contains 3 digits to a side. It therefore contains the first 9 digits, and its usual form is 2, 9, 4, 7, 5, 3, 6, 1, 8. Most will immediately notice that every line, row, and diagonal has the same sum, namely 15. Furthermore, the sum of any 2 extremities in a straight line is always 10. This is the simplest magic square, since one of the first order is a simple digit, and it is impossible to construct one of the second order. Tzayach discusses the relationship between magic squares and the planets, and his system is very similar to that of ancient astrology and alchemy. This is certainly no coincidence, since both lay claim to a very ancient tradition. In Tzayach's system, however, we do not stop with the planets, but continue and proceed to the Sefirot. These are represented by magic squares of the order 10 to 20. These magic squares are apparently used for a very special meditation, where each horizontal row is a house, while each number in this row is a room. Thus, in the magic square of the 10th order, which represents Keter, crown, the first room of the first house is 1, the second room is 2, the third is 98, and the fourth is 97. In the meditative system, each number represents 1,000 myriad, 10 million, parsangs, and 1,000 myriad colored lights. As one mentally travels from room to room and from house to house, going through the magic square of Keter, crown, one must apparently attempt to depict these lights. These exercises thus allow one to elevate himself through the Sefirot in a very graphic manner. The magic square for Keter, crown, is presented in 3 places in his works. He warns against trying to change or improve the squares, as some tried to do. He writes that he received this from my master of blessed memory. One should not add to the squares that we have drawn, since they allude to the highest and most concealed concepts, as we have explained. One who attempts to improve them actually diminishes them, for he does not consider the glory of God. Each house and each room has a specific function, but this I did not learn from my master. In a number of places, Tzayach stops just short of explicitly explaining exactly how these squares are to be used. In one place he states, "If you look carefully at the order of numbers in the houses and rooms, you will understand a wondrous concept regarding the mystery of the order of Atzilut. But I do not have the authority to explain the mystery of these luminaries, or to write down with my pen why there are more in some rooms and less in others." Elsewhere, he repeats that he does not have the authority to reveal the reasons for the numbers associated with each room. He concludes, "This is among the deepest mysteries of the highest Merkavah. It cannot be delineated by books or scrolls. The mysterious reason for this is that they are cycled by the infinite being, Ein Sof, where no eye can penetrate. May he and his name be blessed. But from what I have written, the intelligent will understand." There is considerable discussion as to whether one should meditate alone or together with an instructor. The Baal Shem Tov explicitly taught that one should always meditate with a companion, since this can otherwise be very dangerous. Tzayach anticipates this and writes, "It is necessary for the initiate's master to stand over him the first time, until he becomes accustomed to enter these states. His master can help bring him back to his normal state of consciousness. One must do this until he is properly initiated into these new states of consciousness, lest he gaze and lose his mind, like Ben Zoma." Finally, Tzayach was probably the last Kabbalist to advocate the use of the prophetic position, where one places his head between his knees. This position was used by Elijah on Mount Carmel, and occasionally by the sages of the Talmud. It is also mentioned by Hai Gaon, head of the Babylonian Academy at Pumbedita. Some 500 years later, Tzayach discusses the same position. Speaking of individuals who meditate, hitboded, he says, "They bend themselves like reeds, placing their heads between their knees until all their faculties are nullified. As a result of this lack of sensation, they see the supernal light, with true vision, and not with allegory." This position is also associated with meditation on the houses and rooms in the magic squares. He writes, "If you wish to enter into their mystery, concentrate on all that we have said. Contemplate, hitbonen, the rooms that we have discussed, together with their lights, colors, and letter combination." The Zohar. Among the disciples of Rabbi Akiva, the most prominent mystic was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, best known as the author of the Zohar. Although Rabbi Shimon obviously received a good part of the mystical tradition from Rabbi Akiva, he was not considered his prime disciple in this area. This honor was reserved for a colleague of Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Hanania ben Hakinai. With Rabbi Shimon, however, a new school was developed. The account of Rabbi Shimon's 13-year stay in a cave with his son, hiding from the Roman officials, is well known. Rabbi Shimon had denounced the Romans and had been sentenced to death, barely escaping to this cave. During his stay there, Rabbi Shimon engaged in esoteric meditations and prayers until he was worthy of a mystical revelation of the prophet Elijah. Elijah taught him the deepest of mysteries, which were later to make up the main body of the Zohar. Rabbi Shimon left the cave around the year 138, shortly after the death of Hadrian, and established a new school of mysticism. This school continued after his death, and some 70 years later, his disciples wrote down his main teachings, forming the main body of the Zohar. These later writings were distinguished from the first Mishnah, which was written by Rabbi Shimon himself. Rabbi Shimon's school survived for many years, during which minor additions were made to the Zoharic literature. For over 1,000 years, this body of literature consisted of volumes of notes, restricted to a very small secret society. With the final disbandment of this society, the manuscripts were hidden in a vault and were not uncovered until the 13th century. They finally came to the hands of Rabbi Moshe de Leon, one of the most prominent Kabbalists of that time, and he finally edited and published them in the 1290s. Enough was known of the Zoharic literature by the Kabbalists of that generation to recognize it as being authentic, and it was accepted by them with virtually no controversy. There has always been some question as to the authenticity of the Zohar, especially among secular historians and opponents of the Kabbalah. Some even claim that Rabbi Moshe de Leon was its actual author. The main basis of this allegation is an account by another prominent Kabbalist of the time, Rabbi Isaac of Akko. He writes that he went to visit Rabbi Moshe to see the original manuscripts of the Zohar, but by the time he arrived, he found that Rabbi Moshe had passed away. He was informed that the manuscripts had never existed, and that Rabbi Moshe himself was the actual author of the Zohar. It is upon this account that most of the speculation regarding medieval authorship of the Zohar is based. There are, however, strong questions regarding the veracity of the story told to Rabbi Isaac. It is well known that the ignorant often destroyed manuscripts, or on occasion, sold them so that the parchment could be reused. It is quite possible that the wife did this, and then, embarrassed at not having them, claimed that they never existed. What is most important, however, is the fact that Rabbi Isaac of Akko investigated the matter, determined to ascertain the truth. Although the exact results of his investigation are not known, it is obvious that he eventually accepted the authenticity of the Zohar. This will be discussed at greater length in the section on Rabbi Isaac of Akko. On its face, the Zohar contains virtually nothing regarding the methods of mystical meditation. It does contain many allusions of names and letter permutations, but does not provide a key as to how they should be used. It remained for the Ari to open the door of the Zohar and demonstrate how its methods are to be used. Excerpts from the Zohar. Zohar, Volume 1, page 4a. After the death of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Chia prostrated himself on the earth and kissed the ground. He cried out and said, "Dust, dust, how stiff-necked you are, how brazen you are. The most desirable things decay in you. You consume and pulverize all the world's pillars of light. How dastardly you are. The holy light who illuminated the world, the great master who oversaw the community, in whose merit the world stood, is now decaying in you. O Rabbi Shimon, shining lamp, light of the world, you are decaying in the dust. But you are still alive, directing the community." He was astounded for an instant. Then he said, "Dust, dust, be not proud. The pillars of the world will not be given over to you, for Rabbi Shimon is not decaying in you." When Rabbi Chia rose, he was crying. He left, and Rabbi Yossi went along with him. He fasted for 40 days, so that he should be able to see Rabbi Shimon, but he was told, "You are not worthy to see him." He wept, and then fasted for another 40 days. He was then shown a vision. He saw Rabbi Shimon and his son Eliezer studying a concept that he had discussed with Rabbi Yossi. Many thousands were listening to his words. At that moment, he saw many great lofty wings. Rabbi Shimon and his son Eliezer mounted them. They ascended to the academy of the heavens. While they were there, the wings waited for them. He then saw Rabbi Shimon and his son Eliezer returning. They shone with a renewed glory, brighter than the sun. Rabbi Shimon opened and said, "Let Rabbi Chia enter. Let him see to what extent the Blessed Holy One will renew the faces of the righteous in the world to come. Happy is he who comes here without shame. Happy is he who can stand in this world like a mighty pillar." Rabbi Chia then saw himself enter. Rabbi Eliezer was standing, and all the others who were sitting there stood up before Rabbi Chia. He was very ashamed, but he entered, going to the side and sitting at the feet of Rabbi Shimon. A voice was heard, proclaiming, "Lower your eyes, do not raise your head, do not gaze." He lowered his eyes, but saw a light shining at a great distance. The voice came back as before and said, "O you on high, who are hidden and concealed, open your eyes. O you who fly through all the worlds, gaze and see. O you who sleep with sealed eyes down below, wake up. Who among you has transformed darkness into light, or bitterness into sweetness, before he came here? Who among you waited each day for the light that shines when the king visits the doe? For it is at this time that the glory is increased, and he is called King over all the kings of the world. One who does not look forward to this each day in the world below has no portion here." At that instant, Rabbi Chia saw a number of the groups surrounding all the standing pillars, and he saw them being elevated to the heavenly academy. Some were ascending, while others were descending, and above them all was the Master of Wings. He made an oath and heard from behind the barrier that each day the king remembers the doe who lies in the dust and visits her. At that time, he kicks out at 390 firmaments, and they all are confounded and tremble before him. He sheds tears because of this, and those tears, boiling like fire, fall into the great sea. The tears remain and endure there, and as a result of their power, the Master of the Sea is able to sanctify the name of the Holy King. He accepts upon himself to swallow up all the waters of creation and gather them into himself. Then all peoples will come together to the holy people, and the waters will be dried up so that they will be able to pass over on dry land. While this was happening, he heard a voice proclaiming, make way, for the King, the Messiah, is coming to the academy of Rabbi Shimon." All the righteous are heads of the academies on high, and all the earthly academies have their counterparts there. All the fellows of each academy ascend from their own school to the heavenly academy. The Messiah comes into all these academies, sealing Torah from the lips of the sages. At that moment, the Messiah came to the academy of Rabbi Shimon. He was wearing the highest crowns, given to him by the heads of the academies. All the fellows stood up, and Rabbi Shimon also rose, with his light ascending to the heights of the firmament. The Messiah said to him, "O Rabbi, happy are you. Your Torah teachings ascend with 370 lights, and each light separates into 613 meanings. These rise and are immersed in a river of pure balsamum. The Blessed Holy One seals Torah from your academy, as well as from the academy of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and from the academy of Achiah, the Shilonite. I did not come to seal Torah from your academy, but only because the Master of Wings came here. I know that he does not enter any academy other than yours." Rabbi Shimon then told him of the oath uttered by the Master of Wings. The Messiah lifted his voice and trembled. The firmaments, the great sea, and the Leviathan all trembled, and it seemed as if the world would be overturned. At that moment, the Messiah saw Rabbi Chia sitting at the feet of Rabbi Shimon. He said, "Who allowed a person wearing the clothing of the physical world to come here?" Rabbi Shimon replied, "He is Rabbi Chia, the shining light of the Torah." The Messiah said, "Let him and his sons die, so that they can enter your academy." Rabbi Shimon responded, "Let him be given more time on earth." He was then given additional time. He left that place, trembling, with tears streaming from his eyes. Rabbi Chia trembled, wept, and said, "Happy is the portion of the righteous in that world, and happy is the portion of the son of Yochai, who is worthy of all that." Zohar, Volume 1, page 99b. Rabbi Abba said, "One day I came to a city of the people of the East, and they told me some wisdom that they had inherited from ancient times. They also had books explaining this wisdom, and they brought me one such book. In this book, it was written that when a person meditates in this world, a spirit, ruach, is transmitted to him from on high. The type of spirit depends on the desire to which he attaches himself. If his mind attaches itself to something lofty and holy, then that is what he transmits down to himself. But if his mind attaches itself to the other side, and he meditates on this, then that will be what he transmits down to himself." They said, "It all depends on word, deed, and the individual's desire to attach himself. Through these, he transmits downward to himself that side to which he becomes attached." In that book, I found all the idolatrous rites and practices involved in the worship of the stars and constellations. It included the things needed for such rites, as well as instructions how one must meditate in order to transmit their influence to himself. In the same manner, one who wishes to attach himself on high through Ruach HaKodesh must do so with deed, word, and desire of the heart, meditating in that area. This is what it depends on when one wishes to bind himself to something and transmit its influence to himself. I said to them, "My children, the things in that book are very close to the teachings of the Torah, but you must keep yourselves from these books, in order that your hearts not be drawn to their idolatrous practices and all the other facets mentioned there, and lest you be drawn away from serving the Blessed Holy One. All these books can confuse a person. This is because the people of the East were great sages, who inherited this wisdom from Abraham. He had given it to the sons of his concubines, as it is written, 'To the sons of the concubines that Abraham had taken, Abraham gave gifts.' Genesis chapter 25, verse 6. This was originally true wisdom, but later it was drawn into many idolatrous sides." Tikkunei Zohar, Volume 66, page 98a. Happy is he who elevates his faith in God, taking the divine presence, which consists of 10 sayings, and placing it in a single thought, a single desire, without any admixture whatsoever. Each and every Sefirah, divine emanation, is planted in it, and it is the garden in which all the Sefirot are one. When a person wishes to unify the Blessed Holy One and his divine presence, the male and female aspects of the divine, he must banish all other thoughts. Such thoughts are the klipot, husks, regarding which it is written, "There are many thoughts in the heart of man." Proverbs chapter 19, verse 21. One must then bring the divine presence into his mind, as the verse continues, "But the counsel of God will abide." When a man comes together with his wife, he must remove all clothing, to be together with her as one, as it is written, "They shall be one flesh." Genesis chapter 2, verse 21. In a similar manner, one must remove all other thoughts, which serve as the soul's garments, when he makes the unification twice each day, declaring, "Hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one." Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Zohar, Volume 2, page 216a. This is the mystery of unification, yichud. The individual who is worthy of the world to come must unify the name of the Blessed Holy One. He must unify the upper and lower levels and limbs, uniting them all and bringing them all to the necessary place where the knot can be bound. This is the mystery of, "Hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one." The mystery of "Hear," Shema, is the name, Shem, which becomes 70, Ayin, names. This is the unifying category, Israel. It is called the Elder Israel, Yisrael Saba, since there is also a lesser Israel. Regarding the latter, it is written, "Israel is a child, and I will love him." Hosea chapter 11, verse 1. But the one alluded to in "Hear, O Israel" is the Elder Israel. This Elder Israel is a single mystery and a single unifying category. "Hear, O Israel" thus includes the supernal archetype female and her husband. After the two are included in each other, in a single unifying category, which is the Elder Israel, one must unify their limbs. One must combine the two tabernacles, making them into one in every limb. This unification is accomplished when one meditates and ascends, attaching himself to the infinite being, Ein Sof. It is here that all things, both on high and below, are bound together in a single desire. This is the mystery of "will be," Yihiyeh, in the verse, "God will be, Yihiyeh, one." Zechariah chapter 14, verse 9. It means that he will be one in the mystery of Yihiyeh. The Yud must be attached to the He to make Yud and He. This is the inner chamber, since these are the first two letters of the Tetragrammaton, Yud and He and Vav and He. This is the place that conceals the highest point, which is the Yud. This is the mystery of "God is our Lord." The two divine names represent the letters Yud and He. One must then include all limbs in the place from which they emanate, this being the inner chamber. One brings them back to their place in their essence, foundation, and root, elevating them to the place that is the root of the covenant. Then one must concentrate on the second pair of letters, in Yihiyeh. He must bind the second Yud to the second He. Yud is the mystery of the Holy Covenant. He is the chamber, the place in which the Holy Covenant, which is the Yud, is concealed. And even though we have stated elsewhere that this is the Vav in the Tetragrammaton, Yud and He and Vav and He, here it is a Yud. The mystery is that the two are united as one. God is one. This indicates that one must take everything from there and above and unify them as one. One must elevate the mind so as to bind them all in one knot. And then, one must elevate the mind with awe and love until it reaches the infinite being, Ein Sof. At the same time, however, one must not allow the mind to leave all the other levels and limbs. But the mind should ascend with all of them, binding them so that all of them are a single knot in the infinite being, Ein Sof. This is the unification, Yichud, of the elder Rav Hamnuna. He learned it from his father, and his father learned it from his master, who had a tradition from the lips of the prophet Elijah. 3. The Hechalot School. Another important mystical school was headed by Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, a mysterious personality about whose life virtually nothing is known. A contemporary of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he flourished in the 1st century, living to extreme old age. In one Talmudical account, we find him in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai when the latter was asking his disciples to interpret a certain biblical passage. When Rabbi Nechunya gave his opinion, Rabbi Yochanan declared that it was better than his own. The true stature of Rabbi Nechunya becomes evident in the Hechalot, where we find the greatest sages of that generation sitting at his feet as disciples. It is quite evident that he was the greatest esoteric master of his time. It is from Rabbi Nechunya that we have the Bahir, one of the oldest of all Kabbalistic texts. It is in this book that we find the earliest discussion of the Sefirot, as well as the doctrine of reincarnation. Although no details are given as to how they are to be used, a number of esoteric names are discussed, as well as the general concept of descending to the Merkavah. The Bahir states that it is impossible to become involved in the Merkavah without falling into error, but that one should pursue it nonetheless, since it leads to the way of life. The reason why the mystics call it descending to the Merkavah is because one's vantage point is the highest level of thought, from which one must actually descend to visualize the mysteries of the Merkavah. The most important disciple of Rabbi Nechunya was Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha, who served as high priest in the last days of the Second Temple. The Talmud relates how Rabbi Ishmael learned from Rabbi Nechunya how to derive lessons from every word in the Torah, no matter how insignificant. But most important, Rabbi Ishmael was the prime disciple in areas of mystical meditation, and it is from him that most sources have survived. In one place, the Talmud provides us with an example of Rabbi Ishmael's mystical experience, where he sees Achtariel Yah, the Lord of Hosts, sitting on a high and exalted throne. The association of an angel, Achtariel, with God's name is somewhat difficult to understand. This is a very important point, however, since similar expressions occur many times in the early mystical writings, particularly in the Hechalot. In the commentaries, there appears to be some confusion as to whether Achtariel is the name of an angel or an appellation of the glory itself. This can be understood, however, in terms of the teaching that prophecy and vision must always come through an ispaklaria, which is translated to mean a mirror or a lens. Although the initiate actually perceives God's glory, it is not seen directly, but must be reflected through the ispaklaria. The ispaklaria can be an angel or some other transcendental being, and in this case, it was the angel Achtariel. The same is true whenever an angel's name precedes that of God in mystical literature. This merely means that the angel is serving as the lens or mirror for the vision, or as God's spokesman. In many places in the Bible, we find that an angel speaks in God's name, and this is the inner meaning of what God said regarding an angel, "My name is in him," Exodus chapter 23, verse 11. This angel is usually identified as Metatron, and regarding this angel, the Talmud says, "His name is like that of his master." Elsewhere, the Talmud relates that Rabbi Ishmael said, "Suriel, Prince of the Face, spoke to me." The name of the angel Suriel or Suriyah occurs many times in the Hechalot, and this angel is seen to be a spokesman for the face. From all these sources, it is obvious that Rabbi Ishmael was accustomed to such visions. From these earlier generations, the esoteric tradition was given over to Rabbi Judah the Prince, who is best known as the redactor of the Mishnah, the earliest part of the Talmud. From him, it was given over to Rabbi Yochanan, the redactor of the Jerusalem Talmud, and then to his disciple Rabbi Asi. The tradition finally reached Rav Yosef and Rav Zera, both of whom were versed in the mysteries of the Merkavah. The mysteries were therefore in the hand of the Talmudic sages, and were in use until the middle of the 5th century. Rabbi Chaim Vital points out that many practices involving the use of divine names cannot be successful unless the initiate has been purified with the ashes of the red heifer. This is an important teaching of the Ari, mentioned a number of times in his writings. The red heifer was a special sacrifice, discussed in detail in Numbers chapter 19, and it is the only means through which defilement resulting from contact with a dead body can be removed. The main need for the red heifer arose because one was not permitted to enter the temple grounds while in a defiled state. If a person had ever come in contact with the dead, he would have to be purified with the ashes of the red heifer before he could enter the sanctuary. Similarly, those engaged in the esoteric practices could not recite the divine names unless they were first purified in this manner. The red heifer was a type of sacrifice, however, and sacrifice could only be offered when the temple stood. When the temple was destroyed in the year 70, only a small quantity of the ashes remained, and as long as these were still available, such purification was possible. The last of these ashes were used up in the 5th century, and after that, the method of divine names outlined in the Hechalot could no longer be used. This is verified by an account in the Hechalot itself, where Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva wished to bring Rabbi Nechunya out of his mystical state. They did so by touching him with a cloth that had come in contact with a menstruous woman, and immediately upon touching this cloth, he was dismissed from before the throne of glory. Similarly, an individual who has not cleansed himself of all spiritual and ritual defilement, including the purification of the red heifer, cannot enter into these mysteries. The Hechalot clearly spells out the dangers waiting for those who are not properly prepared and attempt to enter the Merkavah. Sources. Source from the Talmud. Rabbi Ishmael said, "I once entered the innermost chamber of the Holy of Holies to burn incense on Yom Kippur. I saw Achtariel Yah, the Lord of Hosts, sitting on a high and exalted throne. He said to me, 'Ishmael, my son, bless me.' I replied, 'May it be your will that you withhold your anger, and let your mercy be revealed over your attributes. May you deal with your children with the attribute of mercy, and enter with them beyond the call of the law.' He then nodded his head." Source from the Midrash. Rabbi Ishmael said, "I was 13 years old when I went to study with Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah. I asked him, 'Who is the prince of the Torah?' And he replied, 'His name is Yophiel.' I was already fasting, but I decided to increase my mortification. I separated myself from all enjoyment for an additional 40 days, beyond my previous fasts. At the end of the 40 days, I pronounced the great name and brought down the angel Yophiel. He descended in a flaming fire, and his face was like a flash of lightning. When I saw him, I trembled and was confounded. My limbs seemed to dismember themselves, and I fell over backward. He said to me, 'Son of man, how dare you agitate the great assembly on high?' I fortified myself and replied, 'It is known and revealed before the one who spoke and brought the world into being that I did not bring you down to earth from my own honor, but only to do the will of your master.' He immediately said to me, 'Son of man, you putrid drop, you worm, you maggot, even if your soul has begun to purify itself, you are still attached to a defiled body. If you wish that I reveal myself to you, fast for 40 days, and immerse yourself 24 times each day. Do not taste anything that causes an odor, nor eat any kind of beans or vegetables. Sit in a dark room, and do not look at any woman.' After I had done this, he taught me a divine name, with which I would ascend and descend." From Raza Shel Sandalphon. Rabbi Akiva related that he asked Rabbi Eliezer the Great, "How does one bind the angel of the face, Sar HaPanim, by an oath, so that he should come down to earth and reveal the mysteries of things above and below?" He replied to me, "My son, I once brought him down, and he wanted to destroy the world. He is a mighty prince, greater than any in the family on high. He constantly stands and serves the King of the universe in cleanliness, abstinence, and purity, in terror and fear for the glory of his master, since the divine presence is with him in every place." I said to him, "I will oblige him with an oath. Through the knowledge that he will reveal to me, I will oblige him and learn from him." He replied, "If one wishes to oblige himself, he should sit fasting for the entire day when he brings him down. Before that day, he should purify himself for 7 days with the ashes of the red heifer. He should immerse himself in a stream of water and not speak any idle words. At the end of these days of fasting and purification, he should sit in water up to his neck. Before binding the angel with an oath, he should say, 'I bind you by an oath, princes of pride and terror, who are appointed to strike down one who is not pure and clean, and who dares to reach out to make use of the servants on high. I do this through the glorious and fearsome name.'" Source from Rabbi Chaim Vital. There are 4 universes: Atzilut, nearness, the universe of the Sefirot; Bria, creation, the universe of the throne; Yetzirah, formation, the universe of angels; and Asiyah, making, the universe of forms. The prophets were able to see into Atzilut, although it was completely clothed in the lights of Bria when they saw it. Ezekiel lived after the destruction of Solomon's temple, and he therefore only received prophecy from Atzilut after it was clothed in Bria, with Bria itself clothed entirely in Yetzirah. After this, the lights of Atzilut and Bria were no longer revealed at all. This is the meaning of the teaching that after Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, prophecy ended completely, and only Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit, remained. This Ruach HaKodesh consists of a transmission of the lights of Yetzirah itself, as well as lower levels. Attaining this level is called ascending to the orchard, Pardes. This refers to Yetzirah, which is called the universe of the angel Metatron. There are given techniques through which one can open the gates of the physical world so as to enter Asiyah and Yetzirah. These consist of unifications, yichudim, and prayers pertaining to the universe of Yetzirah and its 10 Sefirot. It is these techniques that are taught in the chapters of Echalot, and these practices were used by Rabbi Nechunya, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Ishmael, and the members of the Great Assembly. These techniques were then forgotten. Besides this, the ashes of the red heifer were lost in the period of the later Talmudic sages, Amoraim, during the generation of Abaye and Rava, who lived in the 5th century, as mentioned in the Talmud. After this, they no longer made use of these techniques to ascend to the orchard. From then on, people only made use of techniques involving the universe of Asiyah. Since this is the lowest of the universes, its angels have only a little good and are mostly evil. Besides this is a level where good and evil are closely intertwined, and it is very difficult to separate them. This does not bring any enlightenment, since it is impossible to perceive good alone, and one's perception is therefore a combination of good and evil, truth and falsehood. This is the significance of the practical Kabbalah. It is forbidden to make use of it, since evil necessarily attaches itself to the good. One may actually intend to cleanse his soul, but as a result of the evil, he actually defiles it. Even if one does gain some perception, it is truth intermingled with falsehood. This is especially true today, since the ashes of the red heifer no longer exist. Since one cannot purify himself, the uncleanliness of the husks, klipot, attaches itself to the individual who attempts to gain enlightenment through the practical Kabbalah. Therefore, he who watches his soul should keep far from them. For besides polluting his soul, he will also be punished in purgatory, Gehinnom. We also have a tradition that such an individual will be punished in this world. Either he or his children will become sick, will be impoverished or will become apostates. Learn a lesson from Joseph de la Reina and Rabbi Shlomo Molcho, who made use of the practical Kabbalah and were destroyed from the world. All this is because of the above-mentioned reason. This involves a realm where there is no good devoid of evil. Besides this, it involves coercing angels with oaths against their will. These angels retaliate by enticing this individual, drawing him into evil ways until his soul is destroyed. Beyond this, the methods involving these oaths were concealed by earlier generations, and we are not well versed in the proper techniques. One must therefore keep himself far from these things. 4. The Hechalot text. The Greater Hechalot is one of the most ancient of all mystical texts, dating back to the 1st century. It is also one of the few ancient tracts that explicitly describe the methods through which one enters the mystical state. The key appears to be a type of mantra meditation, where a series of divine names is repeated 112 times. Through the repetition of this formula, one enters the threshold of the mystical chambers, and one must then proceed from one chamber to the next. The ascent through the chambers seems to be a sort of spiritual projection. One creates for himself a spiritual body, and with the hands of this body, he holds the seals that must be shown to the angels guarding each gate in order to gain admittance. Since the initiate is ascending mentally rather than physically, these seals must also be mental images of the names in question. The most probable meaning is that one must concentrate on these names and possibly depict them in his mind. If this is the case, then this method would be very closely related to the method of unifications, yichudim, taught by the Ari. In the selection just quoted, Rabbi Chaim Vital states that the initiate would make use of unifications in his ascent. When one reaches the step before the 7th and final chamber, he is placed in a chariot, karon. It should be recalled that the general word for this type of mystical experience is merkava, which also means a chariot. The merkava is a spiritual vehicle that one creates for himself, with which he ascends into the mystical state. Also of great interest is the interpretation given to the noga and chashmal seen in Ezekiel's vision. These are mentioned in the verse, "I saw, and behold, a stormy wind coming from the north, a great cloud and flashing fire, a glow, noga, round about, and from its midst a vision of the speaking silence, chashmal, in the midst of the fire." Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. These two concepts are important elements in the ascent into the transcendental realm. In the Hechalot, we find that the person descending into the Merkava is the first carried away by a stormy wind, Se'ara. This is the same stormy wind that lifted up Elijah, described in the verse, "There appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which separated the two, and Elijah went into heaven in a stormy wind, Se'ara." 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 11. This is also obviously the stormy wind described by Ezekiel at the beginning of his vision. He is then brought upward in a chariot of noga, this being the glow seen by Ezekiel. The noga that Ezekiel saw was therefore the vehicle that brings the initiate into the heavenly realm. Finally, when he is about to enter the highest levels of the Merkava, the initiate is tested by the chashmal to see if he is worthy. This fits very well into the Kabbalistic teaching that the chashmal is the spiritual element that forms a barrier between good and evil, preventing evil from treading on the domain of the holy. In the Hechalot, it is also the final barrier, excluding all who have not purified themselves sufficiently. Crucial to the entire process is a precise knowledge of the names of the angels, as well as the various formulas and seals needed to ascend from one chamber to the next. Here, unfortunately, we are faced with a serious difficulty, since these exhibit considerable variation in different manuscripts and printed texts of the Hechalot, and it is impossible to determine which versions are correct. The only way to do this would be through a logical derivation of these formulas, and this is presently beyond our means. What is presented here is a synthesis of the best readings found in the various editions. The Greater Hechalot, Chapter 1. Rabbi Ishmael said, "What is the meaning of the hymns that one must chant when he desires to gaze into a vision of the Merkavah, to descend in peace and to ascend in peace? When one is on a higher level, he can enter, and is brought in and led to the heavenly chambers, where he is allowed to stand before the throne of glory. He then knows what will happen in the future, who will be raised and who will be lowered, who will be made strong and who will be cut off, who will be made poor and who will be made rich, who will die and who will live, who will have his inheritance taken from him and who will have it given to him, who will be invested with the Torah and who will be given wisdom." When one is on a still higher level, he can see all the secret deeds of man. He knows and recognizes the adulterer, the murderer, and the one who is only suspected of these things. All this he knows and recognizes. When one is on a still higher level, he knows all kinds of sorcery. When one is on a still higher level, whoever raises his hand to strike him is clothed in leprosy. When one is on a still higher level, whoever speaks against him maliciously is taken and cast down. He is dealt severe blows and suffers from infected wounds. When one is on a still higher level, he is separated from all men and distinguished from all humanity by his traits. He is honored by those on earth and by those on high. Whoever sins against him sins greatly, and evil falls upon him from heaven. Whoever casts a hand against him suffers retribution by the hand of the heavenly tribunal. Chapter 2. When one is on a still higher level, all humanity stands before him like silver before a refiner who can distinguish when silver is pure and which is adulterated. Similarly, this individual can look at a family and see how many converts it contains, how many with mutilated genitalia, and how many conceived from a menstruous woman, how many slaves, and how many uncircumcised. When one is on a still higher level, whoever is disrespectful in his presence has his eyesight diminished. When one is on a still higher level, whoever insults him is torn out, root and branch, and is not left with any air. When one is on a still higher level, whoever speaks badly of him is beset with destruction and bewilderment, and none have mercy. When one is on a still higher level, when he gives permission, they sound the shofar and excommunicate whoever he wills. 3 times a day do they pronounce the ban of excommunication. Permission was granted to the proper, the meek, the humble, the wise, the upright, the pious, the chosen, the ascetics, perushim, the righteous, and the perfected ones, to descend and ascend in the Merkavah. They say, "The wrongdoer shall be excommunicated to Tet Ein Tzadik Shin, the Lord God of Israel, to him, to his throne, to the crown of his head, to the tribunal on high, to the tribunal below, to all the host on high, to all his angelic servants who stand before him, and to those who engage in the Merkavah. They all abandon him." Rabbi Ishmael said, "This has been taught about gazing in the Merkavah. A person so engaged may not stand, except in 3 cases: before a king, before the high priest, and before the great tribunal, Sanhedrin, when the president is with them. But if the president is not among them, he may not stand, even before the great tribunal. If he stands, his blood is on his head, since he diminishes his days and reduces his years." Rabbi Ishmael said, "What is the meaning of the songs that a person sings in order to descend into the Merkavah? He starts with praise and begins with song." Chapter 16. Rabbi Ishmael said, "I stood up and gathered the entire great tribunal, Sanhedrin, and the lesser tribunal, bringing them to the great third hall of the house of God. I sat on a couch of pure marble, given to me by my father Elisha. Those who came included Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer the Great, Rabbi Elazar ben Dama, Rabbi Eliezer ben Shammua, Rabbi Yochanan ben Dehavai, Rabbi Hananiah ben Hakinai, Rabbi Jonathan ben Uziel, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. We all came and sat before Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah. The throngs of our companions stood on their feet, for they saw rivers of fire and brilliant flames separating them from us. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah sat and explained everything involving the Merkavah. He described its descent and ascent, how one who descends must descend, and how one who ascends must ascend. When a person wishes to descend to the Merkavah, he must call upon Surya, the Prince of the Face. He must then bind him by an oath 112 times, in the name of Tutrusii, the Lord, who is called a series of names. One should not add to these 112 times, nor should he subtract from them. For if one adds or subtracts, his blood is on his head. But his mouth should utter the names, and with his fingers he should count up to 112. He then immediately descends, and has authority over the Merkavah. Chapter 17. Rabbi Ishmael said, "This is the teaching of Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanah. Tutrusii, the Lord God of Israel, sits in 7 chambers, one within the other. At the door of each chamber are 8 gatekeepers, 4 to the right of the lintel, and 4 to the left. These are the names of the watchers at the door of the first chamber: Dahaviel, Kashriel, Gehuriel, Butiel, Tophiel, Dahariel, Matkiel, and Shaviel, and some substitute Shiviel. These are the names of the watchers at the door of the second chamber: Tagriel, Matpiel, Sarchiel, Arpiel, Shaharariel, Satriel, Ragael, and Sahiviel. These are the names of the watchers at the door of the third chamber: Shaburiel, Ratsutziel, Shalmiel, Sabliel, Zachzachiel, Hadariel, and Bazriel. These are the names of the watchers at the door of the fourth chamber: Pachadiel, Givuratiel, Kazviel, Shechiniael, Shatakiel, Araviel, Kapiel, and Anpiel. These are the names of the watchers at the door of the fifth chamber: Techiel, Uziel, Gatiel, Gatriel, Saafriel, Garfiel, Gariel, Dariel, and Paltriel. These are the names of the watchers at the door of the sixth chamber: Dumiel, Katspiel, Gachgachiel, Arsparsabiel, Agromiel, Partziel, Machakiel, and Tofriel. And at the door of the seventh chamber erectly stand all the mighty ones, terrifying, powerful, fearsome. Sharp swords are in their hands, flashing lightning shoots from their eyes, streams of fire come from their nostrils, and burning coals from their mouths. They are garbed with helmet and armor, with spears and lances hanging at their sides. Chapter 18. Their horses are horses of darkness, horses of deathly shadow, horses of gloom, horses of fire, horses of blood, horses of hail, horses of iron, horses of cloud. This is a description of the guardians at the door of the seventh chamber, and the horses at the door of each chamber. All the masters who would descend into the Merkavah would also ascend again and not be harmed, even though they saw everything in this chamber. They would descend in peace and return, and would stand and bear witness to the fearsome, confounding visions of things not found in the palace of any mortal king. Then they would bless, praise, sing out, and give glory to Tutrusii, the Lord God of Israel, who rejoices in those who descend to the Merkavah. Chapter 19. Rabbi Ishmael said, "When you come and stand at the door of the first chamber, take 2 seals in your hand, one of Tutrusii, the Lord, and one of Surayah, Prince of the Face. That of Tutrusii show to those standing to the right, and that of Surayah show to those standing to the left. Dehaviel, the angel who is the chief guardian of the door of the first chamber and overseer of the first chamber, who stands at the right of the lintel, and Tovchiel, the angel who stands at the left of the lintel with him, will immediately grasp you. They will give you over to Tagriel, the angel who is chief guardian of the door of the second chamber, who stands to the right of the lintel, and to Matpiel, the angel who stands with him to the left of the lintel. Show them 2 seals, one of Adriaron, the Lord, and one of Ohaziah, the Prince of the Face. That of Adriaron show to those who stand at the right, and of Ohaziah, Prince of the Face, show to those who stand at the left. Immediately they will grasp you, one to the right and one to the left. Perfecting and illuminating you, they will bring you and give you over to Shaburiel, the angel who is the chief guardian of the third chamber, who stands to the right of the lintel, and to Ratsutziel, the angel who stands with him to the left. Show them 2 seals, one of Tsurtak, the Lord, and one of Dahavyoron, the Prince of the Face. That of Tsurtak, the Lord, show to those who stand to the right, and that of Dahavyoron, Prince of the Face, show to those who stand to the left. Immediately they will grasp you, one to your right and one to your left, and 2 angels will precede you, and 2 will follow you. Perfecting and illuminating you, they will bring you to Pachdiel, the chief guardian of the door of the fourth chamber, standing at the right of the lintel, and to Gvuratiel, the angel who stands to the left of the lintel with him. Show them 2 seals, one of Zvudiel, the Lord, and one of Margiviel, Prince of the Face. That of Zvudiel show to those who stand to the right, and that of Margiviel, Prince of the Face, show to those who stand to the left. Immediately they will grasp you, one to the right and one to the left. Perfecting and illuminating you, they will bring you and give you over to Techiel, the angel who is head of the 5th chamber, who stands to the right of the lintel, and to Uziel, the angel who stands to the left of the lintel with him. Show them 2 seals, one of Tutraviel, the Lord, and one of Zahap-Nirai, Prince of the Face. That of Tutraviel show to those standing at the right, and that of Zahap-Nirai, Prince of the Face, show to those standing to the left. Immediately 6 angels will grasp you, 3 from in front and 3 from behind. The guardians of the 6th chamber will attack those who descend into the Merkavah, but do not descend into the Merkavah, attempting this without authority. They throng around such individuals, striking at them and burning them, and then they send others in their place who do the same. They have no compunction, nor do they ever stop to think and ask, why are we burning them? What enjoyment do we have when we attack those individuals who descend to the Merkavah but do not descend without authority? This is still the trait of the guardians at the door of the 6th chamber. Chapter 20. Rabbi Ishmael said, "The entire company said to me, 'Son of the haughty, you rule with the light of the Torah, just like Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakanah. See if you can bring him back from his gazing perception. Let him sit with us and tell us the meaning of those who descend to the Merkavah but do not descend. Why are they attacked by the guardians of the 6th chamber? Why do they not touch those who actually descend into the Merkavah at all? What is the difference between the 2? Rabbi Ishmael said, "I immediately took a cloth of feathery down and gave it to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva gave it to our servant, telling him to take this cloth and touch it to a woman who had immersed in the mikveh, but had not done so correctly. This was to be a case that, if brought to the sages, one would say that she was forbidden, but the majority would say that she was permitted. The servant was instructed to tell the woman, 'Touch this cloth with the tip of your middle finger. Do not press on it, but touch it lightly, as if you were removing a cinder from your eye, where you barely brush it.' They did this, and placed the cloth before Rabbi Ishmael. He caught it up on a perfumed twig of myrtle, which had been soaked in pure balsamum. He then placed it on the knees of Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana, and the latter was immediately dismissed from before the throne of glory. We then asked him, "Who are the names who descend into the Merkavah, but do not descend into the Merkavah?" He replied to us, "These are the individuals taken along by those who descend into the Merkavah. Their guides stand them above their heads, and sit them in front of them, and say to them, 'Gaze, look, and listen, and write all that I say, and all that we hear from before the throne of glory.' These people are not worthy of this, and are therefore attacked by the guardians of the sixth chamber. You should therefore be careful that you choose for yourselves proper individuals, and they should be members of the society who have been screened. When you come and stand before the door of the sixth chamber, show 3 seals to the guardians of the door. Show 2 seals to Kapziel, the angel whose sword is unsheathed in his hand. Lightning flashes from him, exploding and blinding all who are not worthy of gazing at the king and the throne. Nothing can hold him back. His outstretched sword screams out destruction and annihilation. He stands at the right of the lintel. Then show one to Dumiel. Is Dumiel then his name? Is his name not the mighty Gahidriham?" Rabbi Ishmael said, "This is what Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana taught. Each day, a heavenly voice, Bat Kol, emanates from Aravot, the 7th heaven, and proclaims in the name of the supernal tribunal, Tet Ein Vav Mem Sofit, and Bet Resh Mem Nun Tzadi He, Zain Pei Vav Chaf Yud, Gimel Shin Shin, Gimel Ein Shin Taf. The Lord God of Israel calls him Dumiel by name. What I see, I silence. Doom. The same is true of Dumiel. His authority is over the right lintel, and it is the same as the angel Kapziel. But there is no enmity, hatred, jealousy, or competition between them, since both of them serve only for his glory. Chapter 21. The 2 seals of Zeharariel, and those who do his works, show to Kapziel. The seal of Broniah show to the angel Dumiel, an upright and humble angel. Kapziel immediately then draws his bow and fires it. This brings a stormy wind, Se'arah, and places you in a chariot of brightness, Noga. They trumpet before you with 80 million horns, 30 million shofars, and 40 million bugles. The angel Dumiel then grasps a prize and goes before you. And what is this prize? Rabbi Ishmael said, "This is what Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana, my master, taught. The prize that the angel Dumiel holds before the chariot of the individual who is worthy of descending to the Merkavah is not one of silver or gold, but the prize is that this individual is left alone. He is not interrogated. Not in the 1st chamber, not in the 2nd chamber, not in the 3rd chamber, not in the 4th chamber, not in the 5th chamber, and not in the 6th chamber. He can show them all the seal of Dumiel, and they allow him to enter. At the right of the door of the 6th chamber is the angel Dumiel, keeper of the gate, to the right of the door. He sits on a couch of pure platinum, glowing like the radiance of the heavens, like the covenant of the universe. Aleph, Resh, Samech, Tet, Aleph, Nun Sofit, Mem, Yud, Resh, Aleph, Aleph, Daled, Samech, Tet, Aleph, Nun Sofit, and Chaf, Nun, Pei, Yud, Nun, Nun Sofit, Tzadi, Mem, Nun, Shin, Ein, Resh, Nun, He. The Lord God of Israel and the angel Dumiel receive this individual with a pleasant countenance, sitting him on a couch of pure platinum. They then sit by him to his right. He used to say, "I bear witness regarding 2 things and warn you. One dare not descend to the Merkavah unless he has 2 qualifications. First, he must have read and reviewed the Torah, prophets, and writings, that is, the entire Bible, and have mastered the Mishnah, the law, the Agadah, as well as the deeper meaning of law regarding what is permitted and what is forbidden. Secondly, he must be an individual who keeps the entire Torah and heeds all of its prohibitions, decrees, judgments, and laws taught to Moses on Sinai. Chapter 22. If the individual has these two qualifications, then the angel Dumiel entrusts him to Gabriel, the scribe. He writes a note with red ink and hangs it on the chariot, Karon, of that individual. The note describes the individual's Torah scholarship and his deeds, and states that he wishes to come before the throne of glory. When the guardians of the door of the seventh chamber see Dumiel, Gabriel, and Kapziel coming before the chariot of the individual worthy of descending to the Merkavah, they cover their faces, and since they were previously standing, they sit down. They also unloosen their drawn bows and return their swords to their sheaths. Even so, one must still show them the great seal and fearsome crown of Aleph, Ayin, Resh, Samech, Vav, Bet, Resh, Mem, Tzadi, Vav, Gimel, Yud, Yud, He, and Bet, Ayin, Shin, Pei, Tet, Shin, the Lord God of Israel. They then bring him before the throne of glory. They take out all kinds of musical instruments and play before him until they elevate him and set him next to the cherubim, next to the Ophanim, and finally, next to the holy Chayot. He then sees wonders and power, majesty and greatness, holiness, purity, terror, humility, and uprightness. Rabbi Ishmael said, "All the fellows likened this to a person who has a ladder in his house. He goes up and down on it, and no one can prevent him. Blessed are you, O Lord, wise of mysteries and master of secrets. Amen, amen." Rabbi Ishmael said, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was enraged at me. He said to me, "In an instant, we all could have been struck down by Pei, Tet, Resh, Yud, Aleph, Yud, the Lord God of Israel. Why? Because we have been guilty of error. Do you then think that Jonathan ben Uzziel is a minor figure in Israel? That he sat at the feet of Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakanah? What would have happened if we would have approached the door of the seventh chamber?" Rabbi Ishmael said, "I immediately went to Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakanah and angrily said, 'The president of the great tribunal, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, is angry with me. What pleasure have I in life?' He replied, 'Son of the haughty, if this is so, what honor have I from you? I have placed in your mouths the Torah, the prophets, the writings, Mishnah, Midrash, laws, Agadah, and the legal decisions regarding what is permitted and what is forbidden. If not for the mysteries of the Torah that I have concealed from you, would you ever come and show yourself before me? I know why you have come. It is only to learn about the guardians of the seventh chamber. Go tell the president, you have authority to utter the names of all the guardians at the doors of the chambers and to influence them. But the sound of the names of the guardians at the door of the seventh chamber dumbfounds a person. How can one influence them, since each one of them are named after the King of the universe? These I have not revealed. Now that you wish me to reveal them, let all of you come and stand on your feet. When the names leave my mouth, prostrate yourselves and fall on your faces." Immediately, all the spiritual giants of the society, together with the aristocrats of the academy, came, and they stood on their feet before Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakanah. The scribes wrote, and they fell on their faces. Chapter 23. When one is ascending, these are the names of the guardians of the seventh chamber that he encounters. Zepanuriai, an honored and beloved angel. Abirzai, an honored, beloved, and fearsome angel. Atarigiash, an honored, beloved, fearsome, and astounding angel. Nagarniel, an honored, beloved, fearsome, astounding, and precious angel. Anpiel, an honored, beloved, fearsome, astounding, precious, and exalted angel. Nazuriel, an honored, beloved, fearsome, astounding, precious, exalted, and mighty angel. Sastiel, an honored, beloved, fearsome, astounding, precious, exalted, mighty, and majestic angel. Anpiel, an angel whose name is uttered before the throne of glory 3 times each day. The name of Anpiel has been praised in this manner from the day that the world was created until now. And why? Because the ring containing the seal of heaven and earth is given over into his hand. When all the host on high see him, they bow, fall on their faces, and prostrate themselves before him. This is not true, however, of those on the highest level. You may wonder if these are the same ones who bow down before the Prince of the Face. But those who stand before the throne of glory do not bow down to the Prince of the Face, but they do bow down before the angel Anpiel. This is with the authority and permission of Antoros, the great master, and Yud, Aleph, Pei, Yud, Mem, Yud, Lamed, Shin, Nun, Taf, Mem, Resh, Tzadi, Ain, the Lord God of Israel. These are the names of the guardians of the 7th chamber that one encounters when one descends. These are not the same ones encountered when one ascends. Nurpiel, an honored, beloved, fearsome angel who is called Abir Yai. Dalukiel, an honored, beloved, fearsome angel who is called Lev Kapiel. Yakriel, an honored, beloved, and fearsome angel who is called Atrigiel. Yasisiel, an honored, beloved, and fearsome angel who is called Bananiel. Nurpiniel, an honored, beloved, and fearsome angel who is called Shakadyahiel. Naruriel, an honored, beloved, and fearsome angel who is called Zuhaliel. Anpiel, an honored, beloved, fearsome, astounding, precious, exalted, mighty, majestic, powerful, upright, and stupendous angel who is called Tufriel. Why is he called Anpiel? It is because of the foliage, anaf, of crowns upon crowns that is on his head. These cover and surround all the rooms in the chamber in the highest heaven, which is called Aravot. In this respect, he is like the one who formed all creation. Regarding the one who formed creation, it is written, "The heavens cover his glory." Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 3. This is also true of the angel Anpiel, a servant who is called by his master's name. And why is he beloved more than all the guardians of the 6 doors of the chambers? This is because he opens the door of the 7th chamber. Chapter 24. Each of the holy chayot that stand opposite the door of the 7th chamber has 256 faces. These great angels therefore each have 512 eyes. There are 4 chayot opposite the door of the 7th chamber. Each of these 4 chayot has the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle. Each of these 4 faces in turn has 16 faces. When an individual wishes to descend to the Merkavah, the angel Anpiel opens the door of the chamber. The individual then stands on the threshold of the door of the 7th chamber. The holy chayot then lift up their 512 eyes to gaze at him, and each eye of the chayot is like a huge bushel. The gaze of their eyes is like a lightning flash. All this is besides the eyes of the mighty cherubs and the ophanim of the divine presence, which are like scintillating flames and the fire of glowing coals. The individual then trembles, shakes, and shudders, is stricken and faint, and he falls backwards. He is then supported by the angel Anpiel and the 63 other guardians of the 7 doors of the chambers. All of them support him and say, "Fear not, O son of the beloved seed. Enter and see the king in his glory. You will not be destroyed. You will not be burned." He must then chant a praise to the mighty king. They strengthen this individual. Then, immediately, A horn is sounded above him, from the firmament that is over their head. The holy Chayot cover their faces, and the cherubim and Ophanim turn their faces around. The individual then stands alone before the throne of God's glory. Chapter 25. When the individual stands before the throne of his glory, it begins to sing. For each day, the throne of glory sings to Harariel, the Lord God of Israel, the exalted King, crowned with a tapestry of song. Chapter 26. I saw the likeness of the speaking silence, Chashmal. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 27. This tests the individual and determines whether or not he is worthy of descending to the Merkavah. If the individual is worthy to descend to the Merkavah, they bid him to enter. If he does not enter, they again bid him to enter. He then enters immediately. They then praise him and say, "He is among those who have descended to the Merkavah." But if the individual is not worthy to descend to the Merkavah, they warn him not to enter. If he still enters, they immediately cast thousands of steel axes at him. The guardians at the door of the sixth chamber act as if they are casting millions of waves of water at this individual. Actually, however, there is not even a single drop. If the individual says, "What is the purpose of this water?" they pursue him and say, "You miserable creature, you are probably a descendant of those who kissed the golden calf. You are not worthy of seeing the king and his throne." He does not have a chance to move before they cast millions of steel axes at him. But if one enters successfully, he must sing praise. Chapter 3. Rabbi Abraham